Aging has been with us for as long as there has been life, a quiet rhythm that accompanies every creature from the first moment of existence until the last. It is one of the most universal experiences, and yet it remains one of the most mysterious. To speak of aging is not to speak of something unusual or rare, but of something so natural that we sometimes forget how remarkable it truly is. It unfolds slowly, almost imperceptibly, as days become months, and months give way to years, and in that passage of time, small changes accumulate, leaving traces on our skin, our hair, our voices, and even in the hidden chemistry of our cells. To contemplate aging is to contemplate time itself, not the dramatic sweep of centuries or the churning of stars, but the gentle ticking of the body's internal clock, moment by moment, day by day. From the beginning, humans have been fascinated by this process. Ancient myths speak of fountains of youth and elixirs of immortality, legends of gods and heroes who sought to escape the grasp of time. Philosophers, too, wondered about the nature of age, some seeing it as a kind of wisdom written into the body, others as a decline to be endured with dignity. For scientists today, aging is not only a philosophical idea, but also a biological puzzle, one that invites close examination of the very building blocks of life. By understanding how and why we age, we may also learn more about what it means to live, and perhaps even how to live more fully in the time that is given. To begin, it is important to remember that aging is not simply one single event. It is not like a sudden change in the weather or the striking of a bell. Instead, it is a gradual, ongoing, unfolding, made up of countless tiny steps. A single cell divides and carries a small imperfection forward. A strand of DNA accumulates a minor change. A molecule breaks down and is not repaired as swiftly as before. These little moments, imperceptible at first, add together over the course of decades, and eventually they reveal themselves in the form of lines on the face, slower reflexes, or the gentle softening of memory. Aging, then, is both microscopic and grand. It happens inside each cell, and yet it shapes the entire story of our lives. There is a quiet beauty to this process. Imagine watching a tree across the seasons. In spring, its branches burst with green leaves. In summer, it stands tall in fullness. In autumn, its colors deepen and shift. And in winter, it rests bare against the sky. None of these moments is wrong or out of place. Each is part of the tree's cycle of life. In a similar way, our bodies carry us through stages, from youth to maturity to old age, each stage with its own gifts and challenges. We may look back at earlier times and see how different we were, but in truth, all of these stages belong to the same continuous journey. Scientists often begin their study of aging by asking a very simple question: why do we grow older at all? From one point of view, it might seem unnecessary. After all, there are creatures in the natural world that appear to resist aging, such as certain species of jellyfish or the long-lived tortoises that endure for centuries. Some forms of life, like bacteria, divide endlessly and do not seem to age in the way we do. So why must humans, and most other animals, follow this path of gradual decline? The answer is not simple, but it begins with the recognition that living systems are not perfect. Every process, from breathing to digestion to cell division, involves wear, stress, and energy. Just as a river shapes the stones over which it flows, life itself shapes and slowly erodes the body that carries it. To look at aging closely is to notice how interconnected all of its causes are. Sunlight provides warmth and energy, but it also damages the skin. Oxygen sustains our cells, yet in excess, it creates reactive molecules that harm DNA and proteins. Even the act of eating, which nourishes us, produces byproducts that must be cleared away. some of which linger and cause damage if not fully removed. The very processes that make life possible also, over time, leave small scars that accumulate into the phenomenon we call aging. In human life, aging often reveals itself first in small, visible ways. A strand of hair loses its pigment and turns silver. The skin, once firm and smooth, begins to soften and crease. Muscles may take longer to recover from strain, and eyes require more light to read the fine print. These changes are gentle signals that time has passed, markers of the body's journey. Beneath these visible signs, however, deeper changes are taking place. The heart beats with slightly less efficiency. The lungs exchange air with a little less vigor. The immune system, once swift to respond, becomes slower to recognize invaders. The body as a whole remains capable, but its systems begin to move more cautiously, more deliberately. Aging is not only a biological story, but also an emotional and cultural one. Different societies have viewed aging in very different ways. Some see it as a time of honor and wisdom, when elders carry the stories of the community and guide the young. Others see it with more unease, focusing on the loss of beauty or strength. Yet across all cultures, aging is acknowledged as a universal reality, something no person can escape. Even in the modern age, with medicine extending life expectancy and reducing suffering, the basic truth remains. The passage of years brings change, and with change comes the gentle decline that is as natural as breathing. It is important, however, not to think of aging only in terms of loss. Alongside the slowing of the body comes a deepening of perspective. With years come memories, and with memories come understanding. Life lived across decades carries with it a richness that cannot be found in youth. The mind may move more slowly, but it often carries greater patience. The body may weaken, but the heart may grow stronger in compassion. Aging, in this sense, is not simply a fading away, but a shifting of strengths from one form to another. At the same time, science continues to explore whether aging is entirely inevitable, or whether aspects of it might one day be slowed, delayed, or even partially reversed. Researchers look into the details of cellular damage, into the shortening of telomeres, into the decline of mitochondria, searching for ways to intervene. Some hope to extend lifespan, others to extend what is called health span, the years of life spent in good health, free from the heavy burden of disease. While such possibilities remain uncertain, the very act of studying aging reflects humanity's ongoing curiosity about the nature of life itself. For now, aging remains a gentle companion, always walking beside us, never in a hurry, never in pause. It is there in the laughter lines of the face, in the strength of hands that have worked many years, in the stories told by grandparents, in the quiet moments when one reflects on the path already traveled. To understand aging is to understand not just the decline of cells, but the wholeness of life, the way beginnings and endings, youth and age, all weave together into the fabric of existence. And so, as we begin this exploration, we can hold in mind that aging is not only a scientific puzzle, but also a natural unfolding, a process as old as the earth itself, as gentle and certain as the turning of the seasons. 2. Defining aging. When we try to define aging, we quickly discover that it is not as straightforward as it first appears. On the surface, we can say that aging is the gradual passage of time expressed through the body, but this description feels incomplete. Time, after all, flows for everything in the universe, from a stone on the ground to a distant star in the sky, and yet we do not say that the stone ages in the same way a living creature does. For humans, aging is something more than the simple count of years. It is a combination of biological processes, environmental influences, and genetic instructions that together weave the fabric of our life's journey. The difference between a newborn, a child, an adult, and an elder is not merely the number of birthdays celebrated, but the subtle transformations happening deep within each cell, each organ, and each thought. Scientists often distinguish between two forms of age: chronological age and biological age. Chronological age is the simplest to understand. It is the number of years that have passed since a person was born, an easy measure marked by the calendar. Biological age, however, is more complex. It refers to the state of the body's systems, the heart, the lungs, the brain, the muscles, the immune defenses, and how well they are functioning relative to what might be expected. Two people of the same chronological age may have very different biological ages. One may still run with vigor, think quickly, and recover swiftly from illness, while another may struggle with frailty, slower memory, and persistent fatigue. Biological age reminds us that aging is not only about time, it is about how the body carries time within itself. The distinction between these two forms of age reveals something profound. Aging is not uniform. It does not happen at the same pace for every person. Genetics play a role, shaping how cells repair damage or resist stress. Environment contributes as well, through nutrition, sunlight, toxins, and lifestyle. Even chance has its influence, as random changes in DNA accumulate over the years. This variability is why some people reach advanced ages with remarkable vitality, while others encounter significant decline much earlier. The journey of aging is individual, even though its presence is universal. One of the central ideas in biology is the concept of senescence, which is a term used to describe the gradual deterioration of function that occurs in cells, tissues, and organisms as they age. In a sense, senescence is the biological definition of aging. It is not just about looking older or feeling older. It is about the fundamental processes that cause cells to stop dividing, organs to weaken, and systems to lose resilience. Cellular senescence occurs when a cell has divided too many times or suffered too much damage to function properly. Instead of continuing to divide, the cell enters a kind of permanent rest. It does not die immediately, but it no longer contributes to growth and renewal. Over time, the accumulation of these senescent cells changes the environment of tissues, contributing to the signs and symptoms of aging that we experience. Aging can also be seen as a balance between growth and decline. In the early years of life, growth dominates. Cells divide rapidly, tissues strengthen, and organs reach full capacity. There is an abundance of energy and resilience, and the body can repair itself with remarkable efficiency. As maturity arrives, the balance begins to shift. Repair continues, but more slowly, and damage begins to accumulate. By later years, the processes of decline outweigh those of growth, and the body gradually loses its ability to maintain itself at the same level. This shift is not abrupt. It is gentle, unfolding across decades. The body does not suddenly fail. It simply becomes less able to resist the natural forces of wear, stress, and time. It is important to note that aging is not the same as disease. Disease is often abrupt and disruptive, caused by specific factors such as infection, injury, or malfunction. Aging, by contrast, is a gradual, natural process. While it may increase vulnerability to disease, it is not itself a disease. In fact, many researchers emphasize that aging should be understood as a normal biological pathway, one that every living creature follows in its own way. To age is to move through life's stages, not to fall ill. Though illness may become more common as the body grows older, recognizing this distinction allows us to view aging with less fear and more acceptance, as a natural unfolding rather than a failing. The signs of aging that we see on the surface: wrinkled skin, graying hair, Changes in posture are just outward expressions of deeper changes inside. Skin cells lose collagen and elasticity. Hair follicles slow their production of pigment. Bones gradually lose density, and muscles shrink with reduced protein synthesis. These visible changes remind us of the passage of years, but they are only part of the story. Less visible changes also occur, such as the reduced ability of the immune system to recognize and fight pathogens, or the slower regeneration of nerve cells in the brain. The outward and inward signs together form the full picture of biological aging, even though much of it is hidden from view. There is also a psychological dimension to aging that is worth considering. Our perception of age is not always aligned with our chronological years. Some individuals feel old long before their bodies show significant decline, while others feel youthful, even into advanced age. This perception is influenced by health, experience, culture, and attitude. In some societies, aging is associated with wisdom, respect, and authority. In others, it is seen as a loss of productivity or beauty. How one defines aging is shaped not only by biology, but also by cultural values and personal outlook. Interestingly, even within the realm of science, defining aging has been a challenge. Researchers debate whether aging should be considered a programmed process built into our genetic code, or whether it is primarily the result of accumulated damage. Some see it as an unavoidable consequence of living in an environment filled with stressors and imperfections. Others view it as an adaptation, a natural cycle that ensures renewal of generations. What all agree upon is that aging is multifactorial. It does not stem from a single cause, but from many interwoven threads: genetic, molecular, environmental. In trying to define aging, we might return to a simple observation. Aging is change over time within a living organism that leads to reduced function and increased vulnerability. It is a natural rhythm of life, as much a part of existence as birth or growth. This definition is gentle, yet precise. It allows us to acknowledge both the biological mechanisms that cause aging and the human experience of growing older. It captures the reality that aging is not an enemy but a companion, walking beside us as we move through the stages of life. And so, when we speak of defining aging, we are not only describing a scientific phenomenon, but also reflecting on the passage of human life itself. It is a process written in the very structure of our cells, yet experienced in the way our bodies feel, the way our faces change, and the way our minds gather memory and wisdom. To define aging is to recognize it as the quiet balance between vitality and decline, between resilience and fragility, between the ticking of the clock and the unfolding of a life. 3. The architecture of the cell. When we look for the roots of aging, we must first journey inward, down to the smallest units of life that make up our bodies. Every organ, every tissue, and every function of the human body is built upon the foundation of cells. They are the tiny but intricate compartments that carry out the business of life, each one performing its own set of duties, while remaining in constant communication with its neighbors. To understand aging, then, is to understand what happens to these microscopic units over the course of time. In their beginnings, cells are robust and efficient, dividing and repairing with remarkable precision. As years pass, however, changes begin to accumulate. These changes are not dramatic in their individual moments, but subtle, like faint lines slowly etched into stone. They build upon one another until they shape the overall condition of the body. A single human body is composed of trillions of cells, an almost unimaginable number. Each cell contains the instructions for life written in the language of DNA, and with each division, those instructions must be copied. This process is astonishing in its accuracy, yet it is not perfect. Each time a cell divides, there is a small chance that an error will occur. Most of these errors are corrected, as the cell possesses its own repair machinery. But some slip through unnoticed. Over decades, these tiny imperfections accumulate. They may not cause immediate harm, but together they begin to alter how efficiently cells can function. In this way, aging can be seen as the gradual accumulation of cellular imperfections, carried forward each time the blueprint of life is replicated. Cells are not isolated entities. They are grouped into tissues, which in turn build organs, which combine to form organ systems. Within each system, cells must not only fulfill their own functions but also coordinate with the larger whole. The heart, for example, is made up of specialized muscle cells that contract rhythmically, while the nervous system is composed of neurons that transmit electrical impulses. Skin cells create protective layers, immune cells patrol the body for threats, and bone cells maintain the rigid scaffolding that supports us. For all of these systems to work together, a delicate balance must be maintained. When cells are young and healthy, this balance is easy to sustain. But as cells experience damage and strain, the harmony becomes more difficult to preserve. Slowly, inefficiencies creep into the system, and the body begins to show signs of aging. The architecture of the cell is itself a marvel of design. Each cell is enclosed by a thin membrane that separates it from its surroundings, while still allowing exchange of nutrients, oxygen, and waste. Within this membrane lies the cytoplasm, a fluid filled with tiny structures known as organelles. These organelles are the working parts of the cell, each with its own role. The nucleus holds the DNA, acting as a library of instructions. The mitochondria generate energy, fueling every action the cell takes. The endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi apparatus manage proteins, folding and packaging them to be delivered where needed. Lysosomes break down waste, while peroxisomes handle toxins. This miniature world is in constant motion, a city of activity on a microscopic scale. With age, the efficiency of these organelles begins to falter. The mitochondria, so vital for energy production, gradually lose their effectiveness. The DNA within the nucleus accumulates more errors with time. Lysosomes and other cleanup systems work more slowly, allowing damaged proteins to linger. The membrane that encloses the cell becomes less fluid, less able to respond swiftly to signals from outside. These changes are not catastrophic on their own, but together they shape the gradual decline in cellular function that is reflected in the aging body. Another important aspect of cellular architecture is the cytoskeleton, a delicate framework of fibers that gives the cell its shape and allows it to move materials around its interior. This structure is flexible and dynamic in youth, but with age it stiffens and becomes less responsive. Transport within the cell slows down, and communication between the cell and its environment becomes less efficient. As the cytoskeleton falters, the cell itself becomes less adaptable, less capable of handling the stresses of daily life. This decline, subtle though it may be, spreads outward, affecting tissues and organs. Communication between cells is another crucial part of the architecture of life. Cells send signals to one another using chemical messengers such as hormones and neurotransmitters. These signals coordinate growth, repair, and immune defense. In a youthful body, the signaling network is clear and responsive, allowing cells to act in unison. With time, however, the clarity of these signals begins to fade. Some cells stop responding as effectively, while others send confused or excessive messages. This miscommunication contributes to the systemic changes of aging: slower healing, increased inflammation, and reduced adaptability. It is as if the orchestra of the body, once in perfect harmony, gradually begins to fall out of tune. The process of cell division itself reveals another piece of the architecture of aging. Every time a cell divides, its chromosomes must be duplicated. At the ends of these chromosomes lie structures known as telomeres, stretches of DNA that act as protective caps. With each division, telomeres shorten slightly, and when they become too short, the cell can no longer divide. This is one of the body's natural limits, a way of preventing uncontrolled growth. Yet it also means that cells have a built-in lifespan, a finite number of divisions before senescence sets in. This biological clock is one of the key architectural features of life, and it plays a profound role in aging. Another feature of cellular architecture that influences aging is the balance between growth and cleanup. Cells are constantly producing new proteins, enzymes, and structural elements, but they must also remove those that are damaged or no longer needed. This process, known as autophagy, is essential for cellular health. In youth, autophagy functions efficiently, sweeping away damaged components and recycling their parts. With age, however, the process slows. Misfolded proteins accumulate, defective organelles linger, and the overall quality control of the cell declines. This decline is subtle but relentless, leading to the gradual loss of cellular vitality. When we step back from this microscopic view, the architecture of the cell provides a mirror for the architecture of the body. Just as a house requires maintenance to remain strong, so too do cells require constant repair and renewal. Without it, cracks begin to form. First invisible, then gradually apparent. The strength of tissues, the resilience of organs, and the vitality of the whole body all depend upon the health of these individual units. Aging is not a sudden collapse, but the quiet accumulation of small faults across billions of tiny structures, faults that eventually shape the visible and invisible signs of growing older. And yet, even as the architecture of the cell reveals decline, it also reveals resilience. Cells continue to function for decades, sustaining life with remarkable endurance. They carry the marks of time, but they also carry the story of survival. Each wrinkle on the skin, each gray hair, each slowed step is built upon the quiet labor of cells that have served faithfully, adapting to stress, repairing what they can, and persisting despite the challenges of time. The architecture of the cell is not simply the foundation of aging, it is the foundation of life itself, and its slow changes are the threads that weave the story of our years. 4. Cellular damage and stress. When we think of aging at its deepest level, it becomes clear that much of it is tied to the accumulation of damage and the stress that cells endure across the years. Every day, every moment, our bodies are alive with activity. Billions of cells are burning energy, dividing, repairing, and interacting with their environment. This constant activity is what allows us to live, to think, to move, and to feel. Yet it is also what exposes our cells to harm. Just as a river carves grooves into rock over centuries, the very processes that keep us alive gradually leave their mark on our cellular structures. This does not happen all at once, nor does it strike evenly across the body. Instead, it is a gentle but steady accumulation, a layering of tiny disruptions that, when added together, shape the long arc of aging. One of the primary sources of cellular damage comes from the environment itself. The sunlight that warms the skin also carries ultraviolet radiation, which can strike DNA and cause mutations. The air we breathe may contain toxins or pollutants that place strain on the lungs and bloodstream. Even the foods we eat, while nourishing us, can sometimes deliver compounds that produce harmful byproducts when broken down. Over decades, exposure to these stressors contributes to gradual wear, leaving microscopic scars in the body's tissues. The skin, being most exposed, often shows this first. The appearance of lines, spots, and changes in texture are outward signs of deeper cellular disruptions. Inside the body, another source of stress arises from the very chemistry of life. Oxygen, essential for energy production, is also highly reactive. When mitochondria in our cells convert nutrients into energy, They sometimes generate unstable molecules called free radicals. These reactive oxygen species can damage DNA, proteins, and cell membranes. In youth, cells counterbalance this with antioxidants and repair mechanisms, neutralizing most of the harmful effects. But with age, the balance shifts. The production of free radicals often increases, while the efficiency of antioxidant defenses declines. This imbalance, known as oxidative stress, is one of the most widely studied contributors to aging. It creates a cascade of small injuries at the cellular level that, over time, undermine the body's ability to function at its peak. Another form of damage occurs in the very structure of proteins, which are the workhorses of the cell. Proteins must be folded into precise shapes to perform their tasks correctly. But sometimes this folding process goes awry. Misfolded proteins can lose their function or even form clumps that interfere with cellular operations. In a young body, systems such as chaperone proteins and proteasomes help refold or remove these damaged proteins. Yet as the body grows older, these cleanup systems become less efficient. Misfolded proteins accumulate, forming aggregates that are especially harmful to nerve cells in the brain. This accumulation is thought to play a role in age-related conditions such as Alzheimer's disease, where protein deposits disrupt the delicate networks of neurons. DNA itself, the blueprint of life, is not immune to damage. Each cell contains vast stretches of genetic material, carefully organized into chromosomes. Every day, this DNA faces countless challenges: chemical reactions, radiation, metabolic byproducts, and random errors in replication. The body is equipped with a sophisticated array of repair systems, enzymes that can identify and fix broken strands or mismatched bases. But with age, the repair machinery becomes less effective, and some damage remains unrepaired. Over time, these small alterations accumulate, leading to mutations that may affect cellular function. In some cases, they can even trigger cells to become cancerous, which is why the risk of cancer rises with age. The membranes that enclose cells and organelles also suffer gradual wear. These thin, flexible barriers are made of lipids that can be damaged by oxidation. As membranes stiffen or lose their integrity, communication between the cell and its environment becomes less effective. Nutrients may not enter as easily, waste may not exit as swiftly, and signaling molecules may not transmit their messages with the same clarity. This subtle decline in communication further adds to the sense of cellular fatigue that accumulates over the years. Another layer of stress arises from inflammation. In youth, inflammation is a protective response, mobilizing immune cells to repair wounds or fight infection. But as the body ages, low-level inflammation can persist, even when no immediate threat is present. This state of chronic, smoldering inflammation has been given the name inflammaging. It contributes to tissue damage, disrupts cellular communication, and accelerates the progression of age-related diseases. The immune system, once sharp and efficient, gradually loses its balance, sometimes underreacting when needed, and at other times overreacting to minor triggers. The accumulation of waste products inside cells also plays a role in aging. Over time, certain molecules that cannot be easily broken down begin to gather. One example is lipofuscin, a pigment-like material that builds up in long-lived cells such as neurons and heart muscle cells. It is sometimes called age pigment, and while it may not be directly harmful in small amounts, its presence is a marker of the cell's declining ability to clear out debris. These buildups are like the dust and clutter that gather in an old house. They may not bring the house down, but they gradually reduce its efficiency and vitality. In addition to these internal processes, lifestyle choices can amplify or reduce cellular stress. Smoking, excessive alcohol, poor nutrition, and lack of sleep all increase the burden of damage. Conversely, a balanced diet, regular exercise, and restful sleep support the body's natural repair mechanisms. giving cells the tools they need to resist stress. This is why lifestyle has such a profound influence on health span. The years of life spent in good health, the daily choices we make, shape how well our cells can withstand the ongoing tide of wear and stress. Despite the many forms of damage, the body is resilient. Its repair systems continue working faithfully across decades, patching DNA, folding proteins, and sweeping away waste. Aging does not occur because the body fails completely, but because the balance gradually tips toward decline. Imagine a city with roads, bridges, and buildings. In its youth, repairs are frequent, workers are plentiful, and the structures remain strong. Over time, as the workforce dwindles and resources run low, the roads begin to crack, bridges rust, and buildings settle. The city still stands, still functions, but not with the same freshness or speed. This is the quiet story of our cells. To understand cellular damage and stress is to understand why aging unfolds so slowly and yet so inexorably. No single event brings about the shift from youth to old age. Rather, it is the layering of countless small disruptions, each one leaving its mark, each one adding a little to the whole. It is the sunlight of summers past, the breaths taken in polluted air, the meals enjoyed, the nights of wakefulness, the simple act of burning oxygen to stay alive. All of these together shape the gentle decline of the body. Yet within that decline lies a profound truth. Aging is not only the story of loss, but also the story of resilience. For even as cells face damage and stress, they endure, they adapt, they repair, they carry us forward through decades of life, and in their persistence, we find the quiet beauty of survival. 5. Telomeres, the biological clock. Among the many intricate features of our cells, few capture the imagination quite like telomeres. These tiny structures sit at the ends of our chromosomes, acting as protective caps that shield our genetic material. To picture them, imagine the plastic tips at the ends of a shoelace. Those tips keep the lace from fraying, ensuring it can still be threaded through the eyelets and tied securely. In much the same way, telomeres guard the ends of chromosomes, preventing them from unraveling or sticking to one another during cell division. Without these protective sequences, the stability of our DNA would quickly break down, leading to chaos within the cell. Yet while they serve this vital role, telomeres are also finite. With each cell division, a small portion of a telomere is lost, gradually shortening as the years pass. This shortening is one of the most striking examples of a biological clock, ticking silently within our cells, counting down the number of divisions they can endure. At birth, our telomeres are relatively long, reflecting the freshness of new life. As infants grow, cells divide rapidly to fuel development, and with each division, telomeres shorten slightly. In early life, the body produces an enzyme called telomerase, which can help rebuild lost telomere sequences, restoring some of the length. This activity is particularly strong in cells that must divide often, such as stem cells, germ cells, and certain immune cells. But in most of the body's ordinary cells, telomerase is either absent or only faintly active. This means that, for the majority of our cells, telomeres shorten relentlessly over time. By the time adulthood is reached, telomeres have already lost a significant portion of their length, and the process continues steadily with each passing decade. Eventually, a critical threshold is reached. When telomeres become too short, the cell can no longer divide safely. At this point, it enters a state known as replicative senescence. The cell remains alive but loses its ability to produce new daughter cells. It becomes stagnant, unable to contribute to growth or repair. While some of these senescent cells are eventually cleared away by the immune system, others linger, releasing inflammatory signals that can disrupt nearby tissue. The gradual accumulation of senescent cells is thought to be one of the driving forces of aging. contributing to slower healing, reduced tissue renewal, and increased risk of disease. In this way, telomeres not only act as passive timers, but also play an active role in shaping the physiology of aging. The shortening of telomeres provides a fascinating link between molecular biology and the visible signs of age. As tissues lose their ability to renew, skin becomes thinner, hair follicles weaken, and organs function less efficiently. Bones may lose density, muscles may atrophy, and blood vessels may stiffen. These outward and inward signs are not simply the results of wear and tear, but reflections of the cellular limits written into telomeres. Each cell carries within it a memory of how many times it has divided, and when that memory reaches its limit, the capacity for renewal fades. Thus, telomeres can be seen as both guardians and timekeepers, ensuring that cells divide safely, while also setting boundaries on their lifespan. Research into telomeres has revealed a rich complexity. Not all telomeres shorten at the same rate. Lifestyle factors, stress, and environment can influence how quickly telomeres erode. Studies have shown that chronic psychological stress, poor nutrition, lack of exercise, and exposure to pollutants can all accelerate telomere shortening. Conversely, healthy habits such as balanced diet, regular movement, restorative sleep, and strong social connections have been linked to longer telomere maintenance. These findings suggest that while telomeres are bound by genetic limits, their rate of decline can be influenced by the choices we make and the environments we live in. Aging is not solely pre-written in our DNA. It is also shaped by the world around us. Another intriguing aspect of telomeres is their relationship with disease. Shortened telomeres have been associated with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, weakened immune function, and neurodegeneration. Yet paradoxically, in certain conditions, such as cancer, the opposite problem occurs. Cancer cells often reactivate telomerase, the enzyme that lengthens telomeres. By doing so, they escape the natural limits placed upon them, dividing endlessly and forming tumors. This paradox highlights the delicate balance of telomere biology. Too much shortening leads to decline and frailty, but unchecked lengthening may allow cells to grow without restraint. The body must therefore walk a fine line, maintaining telomeres long enough to support renewal, while ensuring that their limitless extension does not fuel uncontrolled growth. The discovery of telomeres and telomerase was a milestone in biology. In the 1970 seconds and 1980 seconds, scientists began to unravel how these structures functioned, eventually leading to a Nobel Prize awarded in 2009 for the elucidation of telomerase. Since then, research has continued to explore how telomere dynamics might be harnessed to influence aging and health span. Could telomerase be safely activated in certain cells to extend their renewal capacity? Could therapies be designed to protect telomeres from premature shortening? These questions remain at the forefront of aging research, offering both hope and caution. For while extending telomeres might slow aspects of aging, it also raises the risk of encouraging cancerous growth. The challenge lies in finding balance, in learning how to extend vitality without compromising safety. Even without interventions, telomeres offer profound insight into the passage of time within our bodies. They remind us that aging is not simply a vague concept but a measurable process, encoded in the very structure of our chromosomes. Each time a cell divides, a piece of the telomere is lost, and with it, a tiny measure of future potential. And yet, this very process is also protective, ensuring that cells do not divide endlessly and lose control. It is a built-in safeguard, a reminder that life is both abundant and finite. When we step back from the science, telomeres carry a kind of poetic resonance. They are silent timekeepers, invisible within our cells, yet shaping the entire arc of our lives. They whisper the story of growth and decline, of beginnings and endings, of renewal and rest. They are both fragile and resilient, capable of withstanding decades of division, yet destined eventually to reach their end. And in this balance, they reflect the broader truth of life, that time is both a gift and a limit, both the source of growth and the measure of decline. As we continue this exploration of aging, telomeres serve as a central theme. They remind us that aging is not random but structured, not chaotic but guided by natural rhythms. They show us how deeply the story of time is written into our biology, and how even at the smallest scale, life is guided by patterns of growth and release. In their silent shortening, telomeres carry the essence of what it means to age, a gentle countdown that shapes the rhythm of life, not as a tragedy, but as a natural unfolding, a quiet companion walking with us through every stage of existence. 6. Mitochondria and energy decline. Deep within every cell of the human body lies a population of tiny structures that quietly fuel life itself. These are the mitochondria, often described as the powerhouses of the cell, for it is they who transform the food we eat and the oxygen we breathe into usable energy. Without them, our muscles would not contract, our brains would not fire with thought, and our hearts would not beat. In essence, mitochondria are the engines of life, humming softly in every cell, day and night, year after year. But like all engines, they are not immune to the passage of time. With age, the efficiency of mitochondria begins to wane, and this gradual decline in energy production is thought to play a central role in the aging process. To understand how we grow older, it is therefore essential to understand how mitochondria function and why they falter with the passing of years. Each mitochondrion carries its own set of DNA, separate from the DNA found in the nucleus. This mitochondrial DNA is inherited almost exclusively from the mother and provides instructions for producing proteins essential to the energy-making process. Unlike nuclear DNA, which is shielded by protective proteins and membranes, mitochondrial DNA is more exposed to damage. This is because mitochondria are constantly generating energy through a process called oxidative phosphorylation, a series of reactions that release not only life-giving energy in the form of ATP, but also reactive oxygen species as byproducts. These reactive molecules, while unavoidable, are also harmful. They can damage proteins, lipids, and DNA, including the mitochondrial DNA itself. Thus, the very act of producing energy also produces the seeds of wear, gradually undermining the efficiency of the mitochondria. In youth, cells possess robust repair mechanisms to counteract this damage. Antioxidant systems neutralize free radicals, repair enzymes mend broken DNA, and damaged mitochondria are removed through a process called mitophagy. Together, these safeguards preserve mitochondrial function and ensure steady energy production. Yet, as the decades pass, these protective systems weaken. Mitochondrial DNA accumulates mutations that disrupt the delicate machinery of energy production. Damaged mitochondria are not cleared away as efficiently, and dysfunctional ones begin to linger inside cells. The balance between renewal and decline shifts, and with it, the body's capacity to generate energy begins to falter. The consequences of this decline ripple outward into every aspect of physiology. Muscles, for example, rely heavily on energy from mitochondria. In youth, mitochondria enable quick recovery from exertion and sustained strength. As they weaken, muscle fibers lose resilience, contributing to the gradual loss of strength and endurance seen in aging. The heart, too, depends on a steady stream of energy to maintain its unceasing rhythm. When mitochondria falter, the heart's efficiency diminishes, raising the risk of cardiovascular issues. Even the brain, though it weighs only a fraction of the body, consumes a vast proportion of its energy. Declining mitochondrial function in neurons contributes to slower thinking, memory challenges, and increased vulnerability to neurodegenerative diseases. In this way, The decline of mitochondria is not confined to a single organ, but influences the entire system of the body. Mitochondria are not isolated individuals. They exist in dynamic networks within cells, constantly dividing, fusing, and communicating. These processes help maintain their health, allowing functional mitochondria to share contents and damaged ones to be diluted or eliminated. With age, however, this dynamic balance shifts. The processes of fusion and fission become less efficient, leading to populations of fragmented and dysfunctional mitochondria. This decline in network integrity further diminishes energy production, creating a cycle in which damaged mitochondria beget more damage. One of the more fascinating aspects of mitochondrial biology is its link to longevity across species. Animals with longer lifespans often display more efficient mitochondrial maintenance and lower levels of oxidative damage. Certain long-lived species, such as birds and bats, seem to have evolved particularly resilient mitochondrial systems, enabling them to resist decline for longer periods. In contrast, species with shorter lifespans accumulate mitochondrial damage more rapidly. This correlation has led scientists to view mitochondria as central players in determining how long and how well organisms live. Lifestyle choices can influence the health of mitochondria in powerful ways. Regular physical activity stimulates the production of new mitochondria, a process known as mitochondrial biogenesis. This helps maintain energy production and reduce the burden of damaged mitochondria. Nutrition also plays a role. With diets rich in fruits, vegetables, and healthy fats, providing antioxidants that support mitochondrial function. Fasting and caloric restriction have been shown in some studies to activate pathways that enhance mitochondrial efficiency, perhaps explaining their association with extended lifespan in laboratory animals. Conversely, chronic stress, poor diet, and exposure to toxins accelerate mitochondrial damage, hastening the decline in energy production. The relationship between mitochondria and aging has inspired new avenues of research aimed at slowing or reversing their decline. Some scientists are exploring compounds that might boost mitochondrial function, enhance mitophagy, or protect mitochondrial DNA from damage. Others are investigating the potential of transplanting healthy mitochondria into damaged cells, or even replacing faulty mitochondrial DNA. These strategies remain experimental, but they reflect the growing recognition that preserving mitochondrial health may be key to extending not just lifespan, but health span, the years of life lived in vigor and vitality. There is also a deeply symbolic quality to the story of mitochondria. These tiny structures are thought to have originated billions of years ago, when primitive single-celled organisms formed a partnership with bacteria capable of producing energy. Over time, this partnership evolved into the mitochondria we know today, indispensable to the functioning of complex life. In this sense, every breath we take and every step we walk is powered by a partnership formed in the earliest chapters of Earth's history. And just as mitochondria mark the beginning of complexity in life, their decline marks the gradual slowing of that life. They are at once a testament to the resilience of biology and a reminder of its limits. To consider mitochondria is to appreciate the deep connection between energy and life itself. We are sustained by the constant flow of energy from the food we consume and the air we breathe, transformed by mitochondria into the spark that powers every heartbeat, every thought, every motion. And yet, with time, these sparks become dimmer, not extinguished abruptly, but slowly fading as the machinery wears down. Aging, in this view, can be seen as a long, gentle decline in energy, a quiet slowing of the engines that carried us so tirelessly in our youth. Even in their decline, however, mitochondria continue to serve faithfully. They may produce less energy. Their DNA may bear the marks of countless years, but they endure, just as we endure. They remind us that aging is not only a process of loss, but also a testament to survival. to the ability of life to persist against the relentless passage of time. In the hum of mitochondria, we hear the quiet rhythm of existence, a rhythm that accompanies us from our first breath to our last, shaping the arc of life through the silent language of energy. 7. Protein misfolding and cellular cleanup. As the body carries out the endless work of living, it depends heavily on proteins. Proteins are the versatile machines of the cell, carrying out nearly every task required for survival. They form the structural framework of tissues. They act as enzymes that accelerate chemical reactions. They carry signals between cells, and they defend the body as part of the immune system. To perform these tasks, proteins must be carefully folded into precise three-dimensional shapes. Their function depends entirely on this structure. Much like a key must be cut into a specific pattern to fit a lock. When proteins fold correctly, the cell thrives. But when folding goes wrong, the consequences can ripple outward, affecting not only the cell, but also the health of the entire organism. Protein misfolding and the gradual decline in the systems that clean up such mistakes represents another layer of the aging process. Protein folding is guided by the sequence of amino acids that compose the protein. As the chain of amino acids emerges from the ribosome, it begins to twist and coil, eventually collapsing into a stable shape that allows it to function. In young and healthy cells, this process is supported by a network of helpers known as molecular chaperones. These chaperones ensure that proteins fold properly, and if they do not, they help refold them into the correct shape. If folding is impossible, the cell has mechanisms to degrade the defective protein, breaking it down into its component parts for recycling. This careful quality control maintains the integrity of the cell's machinery. With age, however, this system becomes less efficient. Chaperones decline in number and effectiveness, and the proteasome, the cellular machine responsible for breaking down defective proteins, becomes less active. As a result, misfolded proteins accumulate. Some of these proteins may clump together, forming aggregates that disrupt normal cellular function. Others may simply linger, unable to perform their intended roles. The cumulative effect is a slow decline in cellular efficiency, a background hum of dysfunction that adds to the overall experience of aging. One of the most striking consequences of protein misfolding is seen in the brain. Neurons are particularly vulnerable because they do not divide readily and must last for a lifetime. Misfolded proteins in neurons can aggregate into structures such as amyloid plaques and tau tangles, which are characteristic of Alzheimer's disease. These aggregates interfere with communication between neurons, disrupt the transport of vital materials, and eventually lead to cell death. Similar processes underlie other neurodegenerative disorders, such as Parkinson's disease, where misfolded alpha-synuclein proteins form toxic clumps. These conditions highlight how the loss of protein quality control, once a subtle cellular issue, can manifest in profound changes in cognition, memory, and movement. Protein misfolding is not confined to the nervous system. In muscles, misfolded proteins can impair contraction and contribute to weakness. In the eye, misfolded proteins in the lens can lead to cataracts, clouding vision with age. Even the immune system is affected, as the proteins that recognize pathogens lose precision, reducing the body's ability to defend itself. Across tissues, the accumulation of defective proteins is like the gradual buildup of rust in a machine, small at first, but increasingly disruptive as time goes on. The cell has another system for maintaining protein quality, known as autophagy. This process allows cells to engulf and digest their own damaged components, including misfolded proteins and defective organelles. In youth, autophagy is active and efficient, constantly recycling materials and maintaining cellular health. With age, however, autophagy slows. Defective proteins remain inside cells, contributing to dysfunction. The decline of autophagy is now recognized as a hallmark of aging, and restoring this process is a focus of research into longevity. Experiments in animals have shown that stimulating autophagy can extend lifespan and improve health, underscoring its central role in maintaining cellular function. Lifestyle and environment also influence protein folding and cleanup. Heat, toxins, and oxidative stress can all increase the likelihood of proteins misfolding. Diets deficient in certain nutrients may impair the cell's ability to synthesize and fold proteins correctly. On the other hand, conditions such as intermittent fasting and exercise have been shown to stimulate autophagy, giving cells a renewed capacity to clear out defective components. This suggests that while aging inevitably brings decline, the pace and extent of that decline can be influenced by how we live. There is also a broader perspective to consider. The accumulation of misfolded proteins is not entirely a failure of biology, but may also reflect the limits of how long a system designed for growth and reproduction can endure. Evolution tends to favor traits that ensure survival and reproduction in youth, not necessarily traits that preserve health indefinitely. Thus, the systems of protein folding and cleanup may not be optimized for extreme longevity. They function well enough to allow individuals to grow, reproduce, and care for the next generation. But beyond that, the decline becomes apparent. Aging, in this view, is not a flaw, but an outcome of natural priorities. Still, the beauty of the system remains. For decades, our cells maintain protein quality with remarkable precision, supporting every movement, thought, and sensation. The fact that the machinery falters only after decades of continuous work speaks to its resilience. Even in decline, the processes of folding, refolding, and cleanup continue to operate, sustaining life as best they can. The persistence of these systems, even in old age, is a quiet testament to the endurance of biology. Research into protein misfolding has also opened windows into possible interventions. Scientists are investigating compounds that enhance chaperone activity, stabilize proteins against misfolding, or boost autophagy. While many of these studies are still in early stages, they represent a growing recognition that preserving protein quality may be one of the keys to slowing the aging process. By maintaining the integrity of the cell's machinery, it may be possible to extend not just the length of life, but the quality of life as well. There is something deeply poetic in the idea that aging is shaped, in part, by the folding of proteins. These tiny molecules, invisible to the eye, determine the strength of muscles, the clarity of thought, the sharpness of vision. When they fold well, life moves smoothly, but when they misfold, the body falters. It is a reminder that the grand experience of aging is built upon the smallest details, upon the delicate shapes taken by molecules that number in the billions. In their perfection, we find youth. In their decline, we find age. And yet, to reflect on protein misfolding is not to despair, but to appreciate the remarkable balance that biology maintains for so long. The fact that we live decades before misfolding becomes a serious issue shows how finely tuned the system is. Proteins fold and refold countless times, sustaining life through endless cycles of activity. It is only when time stretches far that the system begins to strain. And even then, it does not collapse completely, but continues to work, however imperfectly, until the end. Thus, protein misfolding and the decline of cellular cleanup are not just scientific details, but parts of the story of life itself. They reveal the fragility of our biology, but also its resilience. They show us that aging is not sudden or cruel, but gradual and patient, written in the very fabric of molecules. And in that patient unfolding, there is a kind of quiet beauty, a rhythm that speaks to the nature of existence, that all things, great and small, move from order to disorder, from vigor to rest, in the gentle passage of time. 8. Theories of aging. Eye, wear, and tear. When early thinkers tried to explain why living beings grow old, one of the simplest ideas they arrived at was the notion of wear and tear. In this view, the body is like a machine, constantly at work, and with time its parts begin to weaken and break down. Just as a tool used every day eventually grows dull, or as the wheels of a cart wear smooth with use, so too do the organs and tissues of the body gradually lose their strength. This idea, known as the wear and tear theory of aging, has persisted for centuries in various forms. Though it may sound simplistic compared to modern molecular biology, it captures something intuitive: the recognition that continuous use inevitably leaves its mark. To consider this theory is to see aging not as a sudden event, but as the cumulative consequence of countless actions over the course of a lifetime. The roots of the wear and tear theory stretch back to the earliest attempts at medical explanation. Before the inner workings of cells were known, people observed the way materials in the world around them behaved. Leather cracked, wood splintered, metal rusted. Even inanimate objects seemed to change with time, and the human body was thought to follow a similar course. As knowledge expanded and physicians studied the body more carefully, they recognized that organs do indeed deteriorate with age. The heart may weaken, the joints may stiffen, and the skin may thin. To many, these observations seem to confirm the view that the body, like any mechanism, eventually wears down through use. With the rise of modern science, the wear and tear theory gained new layers of interpretation. Instead of focusing only on the visible decline of organs, researchers began to look at the microscopic structures within. They saw that cells, the smallest units of life, undergo stress with every function they perform. Each heartbeat, each breath, each thought requires energy, and the process of using that energy produces byproducts that can cause damage. The theory evolved into an appreciation of the tiny, cumulative stresses that life places upon cells and tissues. It is not one large blow that causes aging, but the sum of countless small ones. One of the strongest examples of wear and tear is seen in the joints. Cartilage, the smooth material that cushions bones, wears thinner over time, especially in joints that bear weight. As cartilage diminishes, bones begin to rub more directly against one another, leading to stiffness and discomfort. This process, known as osteoarthritis, reflects the gradual impact of years of movement. While the body attempts to repair cartilage, it does not keep pace with the wear, and over decades the balance tips toward loss. In this way, the wear and tear theory finds vivid expression in the everyday experiences of aging bodies. The heart, too, reflects the wear of years. Beating millions of times across a lifetime, it endures constant mechanical stress. Over time, the valves may stiffen, blood vessels may lose their elasticity, and the heart muscle may thicken. These changes are not the result of sudden damage, but the outcome of continuous, lifelong effort. Similarly, the lungs show wear through years of breathing. Tiny air sacs, essential for exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide, gradually lose surface area. This decline is made worse by environmental exposures, such as pollutants or smoking, but it is also a natural consequence of use. The simple act of living, of breathing in and out across decades, gradually leaves its mark. Even at the cellular level, the wear and tear theory finds support. DNA accumulates damage from the constant copying and repairing that occurs during cell division. Proteins face stress from folding, unfolding, and refolding. Membranes are battered by oxidative molecules produced during energy production. In each case, the cell is capable of repair. But with time, the efficiency of repair declines. The wear exceeds the ability to restore, and the cell gradually becomes less functional. This imbalance between stress and repair lies at the heart of the wear and tear concept. Critics of the theory point out that it oversimplifies the complexity of aging. Unlike a machine, The body has built-in mechanisms for renewal and self-repair. Muscles grow stronger with use, bones become denser under stress, and tissues heal after injury. Unlike inanimate objects, living systems can adapt and regenerate. This makes aging different from the straightforward wearing down of materials. The wear and tear theory, while capturing one aspect of the process, cannot explain the full picture. It does not account for the role of genetics, nor for the fact that some organisms age very differently despite experiencing similar wear. For example, certain animals, like tortoises or whales, live long lives despite active movement and use. Clearly, something beyond simple wear is at play, and yet the wear and tear theory endures because it resonates with experience. Everyone who has lived long enough has felt the joints stiffen after years of activity, or noticed the skin bear marks of the sun after summer's past. These are the kinds of changes that make the theory intuitively appealing. It may not provide the full explanation, but it describes a truth that people feel in their own bodies, that life leaves traces, and constant use eventually exacts a cost. Modern interpretations of the theory emphasize the balance between damage and repair. Life inevitably produces stress, but the body counters with protective systems, antioxidants to neutralize free radicals, chaperones to fold proteins, immune cells to remove damage. When young, these systems operate at high efficiency, allowing the body to remain resilient despite constant stress. With age, however, the systems falter, repair slows, clearance declines, and damage accumulates. The wear and tear theory, in this refined form, becomes not just a statement about damage, but also about the gradual failure of maintenance. It is not that the body is like a machine without repair. It is that the repair crew grows smaller and less effective over time. There is also an emotional resonance to the idea. To think of the body as bearing wear is to think of it as bearing history. Every wrinkle, every scar, every ache is a record of a life lived. The skin weathered by sun, the joints strengthened and then worn by labor, the heart conditioned by countless moments of excitement or stress. All of these marks reflect not only decline but also endurance. The body shows signs of wear because it has been used, because it has carried us through the experiences of living. From this perspective, the wear and tear theory is not only a scientific concept but also a reminder of the richness of life's journey. The wear and tear theory has been woven into the larger tapestry of aging research. It is not seen as the single explanation, but as one layer among many. Alongside the roles of telomeres, mitochondria, protein folding, and genetic programming, it describes a piece of the whole. Together, these ideas form a more complete understanding, one that appreciates both the inevitability of stress and the sophistication of repair. In this balance, aging emerges not as a failure, but as a natural rhythm, the quiet consequence of living, day after day, year after year. Thus, to reflect on the wear and tear theory is to recognize both its simplicity and its depth. It is simple in that it portrays aging as the product of use and strain, yet it is deep in that it captures something universal, the idea that living leaves its mark, whether in the creases of skin, the fatigue of muscles, or the subtle slowing of thought. The traces of wear remind us of the life that has been carried within the body. Aging, in this sense, is not only the outcome of cellular stress but the record of existence itself, inscribed in the tissues of time. 9. Theories of aging 2. Free radicals. As science progressed into the 20th century, researchers began to look more closely at the chemistry within our cells and how it might influence aging. One idea that emerged and gained enduring attention is known as the free radical theory of aging. This theory proposes that the gradual accumulation of damage caused by unstable molecules, called free radicals, plays a central role in the decline of cellular function over time. Unlike the straightforward wear and tear theory, which likens the body to a machine that deteriorates with use, the free radical theory delves into the invisible world of molecules and the chemical reactions that sustain life. It suggests that the very oxygen we rely on for survival may also contribute to the slow erosion of our vitality. Free radicals are molecules or atoms that have an unpaired electron. This may seem like a small detail, but in the realm of chemistry, it creates instability. Atoms prefer to have paired electrons, which give them stability, but when one is unpaired, the molecule becomes reactive, seeking to steal or share an electron from another molecule. This restless search makes free radicals highly disruptive. They can attack proteins, lipids, and DNA, altering their structure and impairing their function. In essence, free radicals are sparks within the cellular machinery, tiny bursts of chaos that, over time, leave lasting marks. In the human body, most free radicals are generated during the process of producing energy. Inside the mitochondria, oxygen is used to convert nutrients into ATP, the energy currency of the cell. While this process is efficient, it is not perfect. A small percentage of oxygen molecules are converted into reactive oxygen species, a form of free radicals. These reactive molecules can diffuse outward, damaging nearby cellular structures. Thus, the very act of breathing and generating energy, so essential to life, also creates a steady stream of potentially harmful byproducts. Young bodies are well equipped to handle this. Antioxidant systems, such as superoxide dismutase, catalase, and glutathione, act as protective shields, neutralizing free radicals before they can inflict serious damage. Vitamins like C and E, obtained from food, also contribute to the body's antioxidant defense. However, as the body ages, these protective systems lose efficiency. The production of free radicals may increase as mitochondria falter, while the capacity to neutralize them declines. The result is oxidative stress, a state in which free radicals overwhelm the defenses and cause cumulative damage. Over decades, this imbalance may contribute to the gradual breakdown of tissues and organs, forming one of the cornerstones of the free radical theory of aging. The evidence for this theory is found in many aspects of biology. For instance, DNA mutations caused by oxidative stress accumulate with age, affecting the integrity of genetic material. Proteins exposed to free radicals can become cross-linked or misfolded, disrupting their roles in cellular function. Lipids in cell membranes are particularly vulnerable, as free radicals can initiate chain reactions that damage the entire structure of the membrane, impairing communication and transport. These molecular injuries may be small in any given moment, but across years they build into significant dysfunction. The free radical theory suggests that this accumulation is a driving force behind the frailty and decline associated with old age. There are also striking examples in the natural world that seem to support the theory. Animals with longer lifespans often produce fewer free radicals relative to their size and metabolism. Bats, for instance, live remarkably long for their body size and show unusually efficient mitochondrial function, generating less oxidative stress. Birds, too, are long-lived compared to mammals of similar size, and their cells display stronger antioxidant defenses. These patterns suggest that managing oxidative stress effectively may be tied to longevity. Conversely, species with high metabolic rates and less robust antioxidant systems tend to live shorter lives, their bodies wearing down more quickly under the onslaught of free radical damage. Yet, like many theories, the free radical concept is not without complexity. Some studies have shown that artificially boosting antioxidant levels does not always extend lifespan in laboratory animals, and in some cases, it may even have negative effects. This has led to refinements of the theory, suggesting that free radicals are not solely destructive, but may also play signaling roles in cells, helping to regulate growth, adaptation, and defense. In this view, the problem is not the existence of free radicals themselves, but the imbalance that arises when they become too abundant. Small amounts may be beneficial, prompting cells to strengthen their defenses, while excessive amounts tip the scale toward harm. This more nuanced perspective sees aging not simply as the result of free radicals, but as the result of disrupted balance between damage and repair. The free radical theory has also shaped how we think about lifestyle and aging. Diets rich in antioxidants, such as those found in fruits, vegetables, and teas, are thought to support the body's natural defenses against oxidative stress. Exercise, too, has a paradoxical effect. In the short term, physical activity increases free radical production, but over time, it strengthens the body's antioxidant systems, leading to greater resilience. This illustrates the subtlety of biology. Stress, in moderation, can actually be protective. Too little stress leaves the system unprepared, while too much overwhelms it. The key lies in balance, a recurring theme in the biology of aging. From a broader perspective, the free radical theory adds depth to our understanding of the aging process by connecting it to the chemistry of life itself. It shows how aging is not merely a matter of time, but of interactions between molecules, of tiny sparks that accumulate into lasting change. It reminds us that life is dynamic, sustained by chemical reactions that are both creative and destructive. The oxygen that keeps us alive also carries within it the seeds of decline, and the dance between energy production and oxidative stress shapes the rhythm of our years. There is also a quiet poetry in the idea. Free radicals are invisible, fleeting, and unstable, yet their effects are profound and lasting. They are like whispers of time, marking the body from within. Their traces may be found in the stiffness of joints, the fading of memory, the thinning of skin, and yet they are also part of the same processes that allow us to move, think, and feel. Aging, through the lens of the free radical theory, is not a battle lost to invaders, but a balance tilted slowly over time. The inevitable result of life's own chemistry, though not the sole explanation. The free radical theory remains a vital piece of the puzzle of aging. It illustrates how the smallest changes, at the level of electrons and molecules, can shape the grand story of human life. It reminds us that decline is not sudden but cumulative, a gradual layering of damage that begins with the very act of living. And in this understanding, we find a kind of acceptance that to live is to burn energy, to breathe, to create sparks, and that with those sparks comes both the brilliance of vitality and the soft fading that follows. Aging, in this view, is the gentle shadow cast by the light of life itself. 10. Theories of Aging 3. Genetic programming. As the exploration of aging deepened, scientists began to ask whether the process might be written directly into the blueprint of life itself. This idea, often called the genetic programming theory of aging, proposes that aging is not merely the result of accumulated damage or environmental stress, but is, at least in part, guided by instructions encoded in our genes. Just as our DNA orchestrates the development of a child into an adult, perhaps it also carries instructions for the gradual decline of the body, setting the pace of life as firmly as it sets the color of our eyes or the shape of our faces. In this view, aging is not entirely random, but is part of a biological plan, a programmed sequence of changes that unfolds over time. The origins of this idea can be traced to the observation that different species age at dramatically different rates. Consider the contrast between a mouse and a whale. A mouse, though agile and full of energy, lives only a few short years. A whale, on the other hand, can endure for decades, some even surpassing a century. Similarly, certain turtles, trees, and deep-sea creatures live astonishingly long lives, far outlasting humans. If aging were only a matter of wear and tear or random damage, one might expect lifespans to be more similar across species of comparable size or environment. Instead, longevity appears tightly controlled within each species, suggesting that genetic factors play a profound role in determining the span of life. Evidence for genetic influence on aging also comes from studies of families and populations. In humans, longevity often runs in families. Children of long-lived parents are statistically more likely to reach advanced ages themselves. Twin studies, which compare identical twins with shared genetic material to fraternal twins with less genetic overlap, also suggest that genes account for a significant portion of variation in lifespan. These observations point toward a biological script written into DNA that influences not only how long we live, but also how we age along the way. Within this theory, certain genes have been identified as potential regulators of aging. In simple organisms such as yeast, worms, and flies, mutations in specific genes have been shown to dramatically extend lifespan. Some of these genes are involved in pathways that regulate metabolism, stress resistance, and growth. For example, reducing the activity of genes related to insulin, signaling, and growth hormone pathways often leads to longer lifespans in laboratory animals. These findings suggest that evolution has embedded within the genome switches and levers that control the rate of aging, perhaps as part of a broader strategy to balance survival and reproduction. One of the most striking aspects of the genetic programming theory is the idea that aging may serve an evolutionary purpose. While natural selection favors traits that enhance reproductive success, it does not necessarily favor traits that extend life beyond the reproductive years. Once an organism has produced offspring and ensured their survival, the force of natural selection weakens. Traits that promote longevity may persist if they aid reproduction, but traits that cause decline in later life are less likely to be weeded out. This idea, sometimes referred to as the evolutionary trade-off, suggests that the same genetic pathways that promote growth and reproduction in youth may also contribute to aging in later years. Growth and decline, vitality and frailty, may be two sides of the same coin, inscribed by genes that balance the needs of survival across the arc of life. A good example of this trade-off is seen in the role of hormones. During youth, growth hormones and insulin-like growth factors drive development, fueling muscle and bone growth and supporting reproduction. These hormones are advantageous in early life, but in later years, continued high levels of such signals are linked to increased risk of cancer and other age-related diseases. In this way, genes that promote early success may inadvertently sow the seeds of decline, a phenomenon sometimes described as antagonistic pleiotropy, where a single gene has beneficial effects early in life, but detrimental effects later. The genetic programming theory also finds support in the study of cellular senescence. As described earlier, cells are programmed to divide only a limited number of times before they stop. This limit, linked to telomere shortening, is not simply a matter of random wear but a regulated process, one that prevents uncontrolled cell division in cancer. While protective, this program also contributes to the gradual loss of tissue renewal, weaving aging into the very fabric of genetic control. In this sense, senescence is both a safeguard and a clock, an example of how genetic programming balances survival with eventual decline. Despite its appeal, the genetic programming theory is not without debate. Critics argue that aging may not be directly programmed, but rather a byproduct of other genetic instructions. From this perspective, genes are not specifically coding for aging, but the effects of certain genes in later life appear as aging. The decline may be less a deliberate program and more an unintended consequence of genetic strategies that serve reproduction. Still, whether aging is actively programmed or simply permitted by the absence of selective pressure, the role of genes is undeniable. They set the framework within which aging occurs, determining resilience, repair capacity, and susceptibility to disease. Research into genetic influences on aging has inspired new questions and possibilities. Could altering certain pathways extend human lifespan? Could gene editing or targeted therapies adjust the pace of aging, enhancing health without triggering harmful side effects. Already, experiments in animals have shown that tweaking metabolic and stress response genes can extend life by significant margins. Whether these findings can be safely translated to humans remains uncertain, but they highlight the potential of genetics as a key to longevity. Beyond the science, the genetic programming theory carries a profound philosophical weight. If aging is encoded in our DNA, then it is not merely the result of chance or environment, but part of the very design of life. It suggests that decline is as intentional as growth, that endings are as deeply woven into biology as beginnings. This perspective can inspire both humility and wonder. It reveals life as a cycle written at the deepest level of our being, a story that unfolds not just through experience, but through instructions passed down from one generation to the next. At the same time, it reminds us that genetics is not destiny. While genes provide the script, environment, and lifestyle shape the performance. Identical twins with shared DNA may age differently depending on diet, stress, activity, and exposure to toxins. Thus, even within the framework of genetic programming, there remains room for variation and influence. The script may be written, but the way it is read and lived can change. In the end, the genetic programming theory underscores the intimate link between biology and time. It shows us that aging is not only the accumulation of damage, but also the expression of a genetic rhythm, a dance between survival and decline that has shaped life for countless generations. To see aging as programmed is to see it as part of life's design, a natural unfolding guided by the same forces that guide birth and growth. It is both a limit and a reminder that life is precious, finite, and deeply structured by the silent language of genes. 11. The evolutionary lens. When scientists began to step back from the microscopic details of cells and molecules, they started asking a broader question: exist at all from the standpoint of evolution? If natural selection is the great sculptor of life, shaping traits that ensure survival and reproduction, then why has it allowed the gradual decline of aging to persist in nearly every species? Would it not be advantageous for animals to remain youthful and vigorous indefinitely, ensuring their survival for as long as possible? At first glance, this seems like a contradiction, but through the lens of evolutionary biology, aging begins to appear not as a flaw but as an outcome of life's priorities, a byproduct of strategies that favor reproduction and the continuation of species over the indefinite extension of individual lives. One of the most influential ideas in this area is the disposable soma theory. The word soma refers to the body itself. According to this theory, organisms are shaped by the trade-offs of energy allocation. Each creature has limited resources to invest, and evolution favors using those resources where they matter most on reproduction. The body, or soma, exists to support the production and nurturing of offspring, but it is not designed to last forever. Energy spent on maintenance and repair of the body competes with energy needed for reproduction. Once reproductive success is achieved, the evolutionary pressure to maintain the soma weakens. Aging, in this view, is the gradual wearing down of a body that evolution has not prioritized for eternal upkeep. It is disposable in the sense that the genetic lineage, carried by offspring, is what truly persists. This theory helps explain why species with different life histories age at different rates. Animals that face high risks of predation in the wild, such as mice, tend to reproduce quickly and abundantly. Their bodies are not designed for longevity because the chances of surviving long are slim. Investing heavily in maintenance would not provide much evolutionary advantage when the likelihood of being caught by a predator is so high. On the other hand, animals that are less vulnerable to predators, such as elephants or whales, invest more in maintaining their bodies and reproduce at a slower pace. Their longevity supports their survival strategy. In this way, aging is not uniform but tailored by evolution to fit the ecological context of each species. Another evolutionary explanation of aging is known as antagonistic pleiotropy. This theory suggests that some genes have effects that are beneficial early in life but detrimental later on. Evolution favors these genes because the early life benefits enhance reproductive success, even if the later life consequences lead to decline. For example, genes that increase reproductive hormones may promote fertility and strength in youth but contribute to cancer or metabolic disease in old age. Because natural selection operates most strongly on traits that affect reproduction, these genes persist, even though they eventually contribute to aging. Antagonistic pleiotropy highlights the trade-offs woven into biology. What helps in youth may harm in age, but the advantage in reproduction outweighs the cost of decline. Closely related is the mutation accumulation theory, which argues that genetic mutations that have harmful effects in later life are less likely to be eliminated by natural selection. If a mutation causes problems only after an organism has reproduced, its impact on evolutionary fitness is minimal. Over time, such mutations accumulate in the population, contributing to the frailty and decline of old age. In this way, aging can be seen as the collective weight of genetic changes that natural selection has little reason to remove. The body may be finely tuned for youth and reproduction, but it is less protected against the gradual erosion of later years. These evolutionary perspectives shift the focus from aging as an inevitable biological breakdown to aging as a consequence of life's deeper priorities. Evolution is not concerned with the comfort or longevity of individuals, but with the continuation of genetic material across generations. Once an organism has successfully reproduced and helped ensure the survival of its offspring, the pressure to remain youthful diminishes. Aging, then, is not directly selected for but emerges naturally from the balance between reproduction, maintenance, and survival strategies. In humans, these theories provide fascinating insights into why our lifespans are relatively long compared to many animals. Unlike species that produce large numbers of offspring and invest little in their care, humans invest heavily in nurturing children. The long developmental period of human offspring requires parents, and often grandparents, to remain alive and capable for many years. This may have exerted evolutionary pressure to extend lifespan, supporting the so-called grandmother hypothesis, which suggests that the survival of older individuals contributes to the success of younger generations. In this sense, the longevity of humans is not just about individual survival, but about the role of extended kinship and caregiving in human society. Even so, human longevity has its limits. While advances in medicine and technology have extended average life expectancy, the biological ceiling remains. Evolution has not optimized the human body for endless repair, and so aging still emerges as part of our natural story. We live longer than many animals because it supports our social and reproductive strategies, but we are not exempt from the trade-offs that shape all living beings. The evolutionary lens also helps us understand the diversity of aging patterns in the natural world. Some organisms, such as certain species of turtles, rockfish, or trees, show negligible senescence, meaning they do not appear to age in the same way humans do. Their risk of death does not increase with time, and their reproductive output remains steady. This shows that aging is not universal in its details, but shaped by ecological and evolutionary contexts. In species where survival strategies allow for long lives, evolution has not imposed strict limits on bodily maintenance. In others, where the pressures of predation or environment are strong, aging appears earlier and more pronounced. Philosophically, the evolutionary perspective reframes aging not as a flaw but as a natural outcome of life's design. It reminds us that nature does not strive for eternal youth, but for balance, efficiency, and survival of the lineage. Aging becomes not an enemy but a byproduct, arising because energy and resources must be prioritized, and because the force of natural selection wanes with time. It is not that nature wants us to age, but rather that it has no reason to prevent it once the central work of reproduction is done. This perspective can bring a certain peace. Instead of seeing aging as a failure of the body, we can see it as part of the larger rhythm of life, a reflection of evolution's focus on continuity rather than permanence. Just as leaves fall after feeding the tree through the summer, or as rivers change course after shaping valleys, so too does the body shift with time, moving from growth to decline in accordance with deeper laws of nature. The evolutionary theories of aging do not provide all the answers, but they add a profound dimension to our understanding. They show us that aging is not only about damaged molecules or failing repair systems, but also about the grand strategies of life itself. It is the echo of ancient trade-offs, the imprint of choices made by evolution across millions of years. In that sense, to age is to carry the story of life's priorities within us, written not only in our cells, but in the history of the species we belong to. Aging, seen through this lens, is not merely the decline of the individual, but the unfolding of a narrative shaped by survival, reproduction, and the ceaseless passage of time. 12. Systemic aging in the body. When we think about aging, it is easy to focus on the microscopic changes hidden within our cells, the shortening of telomeres, the faltering of mitochondria, the misfolding of proteins. Yet aging is not experienced at the molecular scale. It unfolds in the whole body, revealing itself through the way our tissues, organs, and systems gradually change over time. These systemic effects of aging are what shape the lived experience of growing older. The skin that wrinkles and softens, the muscles that lose strength, the bones that become fragile, the heart that beats more slowly, and the senses that grow less sharp. Each of these shifts is tied to the invisible changes happening deep inside the body, but together they create the visible and tangible portrait of age. The skin is often the first organ to show the passage of time. It is the largest organ of the body and the most exposed to the environment, bearing the constant effects of sunlight, air, and touch. In youth, skin is rich in collagen and elastin, proteins that provide firmness and flexibility. As the years pass, collagen production slows, elastin fibers weaken, and the underlying support structures lose density. The skin becomes thinner, drier, and less resilient. Wrinkles form, first fine and shallow, then deeper with time. Spots of pigmentation appear as a record of sun exposure, and small blood vessels may become more visible. These outward signs of aging reflect a deeper truth. The body's ability to regenerate tissues has slowed, and the cumulative effects of cellular damage now manifest on the surface. Beneath the skin, muscles also reveal the weight of time. The gradual loss of muscle mass and strength, known as sarcopenia, begins subtly in middle age and accelerates in later years. Muscle fibers shrink in size, and the number of motor neurons that stimulate them decreases. As mitochondria within muscle cells decline, energy production falters, making sustained exertion more difficult. The body becomes slower to recover from physical activity, and balance may be affected, increasing the risk of falls. Exercise and movement can slow this decline, but the underlying trend is steady. The muscles of an aging body are less powerful than those of youth, and the capacity for repair is reduced. The skeletal system, too, undergoes profound changes. Bones are dynamic tissues, constantly remodeled by cells that build new bone and cells that break down old bone. In youth, these processes are balanced, with bone formation matching or exceeding bone resorption. As aging progresses, however, the balance shifts. Bone resorption begins to outpace bone formation, leading to gradual loss of bone density. This process, known as osteoporosis when it becomes pronounced, increases the risk of fractures, particularly in the hips, spine, and wrists. Posture may change as the vertebrae compress, and the body may lose height. Just as with muscles, physical activity and proper nutrition can slow bone loss, But the systemic trend of skeletal aging reflects the body's diminishing ability to renew and maintain its structural strength. The cardiovascular system, tirelessly at work from the moment of birth, also reflects the march of time. The heart, which beats billions of times over a lifetime, undergoes structural changes with age. Its walls may thicken, its chambers may enlarge slightly, and the valves that regulate blood flow may stiffen. The arteries, once supple and elastic, gradually lose their flexibility, becoming stiffer and narrower. This process, called arteriosclerosis, increases blood pressure and forces the heart to work harder. Circulation becomes less efficient, and the risk of heart disease rises. These changes are not sudden but gradual, a soft shifting of the cardiovascular system's resilience into a state of increased vulnerability. The respiratory system, too, bears the marks of time. The lungs are composed of millions of tiny air sacs where oxygen passes into the day. Blood and carbon dioxide leaves. With aging, the elasticity of these sacs diminishes, reducing the efficiency of gas exchange. Breathing becomes shallower, and endurance decreases. Environmental exposures, smoke, pollutants, and infections amplify this decline. But even in their absence, the natural process of lung aging gently reduces the body's capacity for vigorous activity. The digestive system undergoes subtler changes, but they too are part of systemic aging. The muscles that move food through the intestines may weaken, slowing digestion. The stomach may produce less acid, reducing the absorption of certain nutrients. The liver, which processes toxins and produces essential proteins, may shrink slightly in size, and its metabolic efficiency may decrease. These changes are rarely dramatic but contribute to shifts in appetite, metabolism, and energy balance that accompany later years. The nervous system is one of the most remarkable and complex systems in the body, and it is also deeply affected by age. The brain gradually loses volume, particularly in areas associated with memory and decision-making. Neurons shrink, and the connections between them, synapses, decline in number. Communication within the brain slows, and reflexes may become less sharp. While many functions are preserved well into old age, memory may falter, learning may take longer, and multitasking becomes more difficult. The decline of neurotransmitters, such as dopamine and acetylcholine, contributes to these changes. At the same time, the brain retains a measure of plasticity, the ability to adapt and form new connections. Even in later life, this adaptability allows older adults to continue learning, though in different ways than when they were young. The sensory systems, sight, hearing, taste, and smell, also reflect the passage of time. The eyes lose some of their ability to focus on close objects, a condition known as presbyopia. The lenses may cloud, leading to cataracts, and the retina may thin, reducing sensitivity to light. Hearing may decline as the delicate hair cells in the inner ear deteriorate, particularly for high-frequency sounds. Taste and smell may dull, affecting appetite and enjoyment of food. These sensory changes alter the way we experience the world, but they, too, unfold gradually, a soft fading rather than a sudden loss. The immune system, which protects the body against infection and disease, also weakens with age. This decline, known as immunosenescence, reduces the ability to fight off pathogens and increases vulnerability to illness. At the same time, the immune system may become prone to chronic, low-level activation, a state sometimes referred to as inflammaging. This contributes to tissue damage and increases the risk of conditions such as atherosclerosis, diabetes, and dementia. The balance between defense and inflammation shifts, leaving the aging body more fragile, less able to mount strong responses, and more likely to develop chronic diseases. Even the endocrine system, which regulates hormones, shifts with time. Levels of growth hormone, estrogen, testosterone, and other key hormones decline, altering metabolism, mood, and energy balance. These changes contribute to bone loss, muscle weakness, and shifts in body composition. The coordination between organs becomes less precise, and the body's ability to maintain stable internal conditions weakens. Taken together, these systemic changes illustrate how aging is not confined to any single organ or tissue but is a whole body experience. The visible signs of wrinkles or gray hair are only the surface of a deeper process that touches every system of the body. Each part contributes to the gradual slowing of the whole, a symphony of decline that, though often quiet and gentle, is undeniable. And yet, within this decline lies a remarkable resilience. Despite the loss of muscle, bones, and elasticity, the body continues to function for decades. It adapts, finding new ways to compensate for its weaknesses. Older adults often develop strategies to preserve independence and strength, relying on experience and wisdom to navigate challenges. The body may age, but it endures, carrying the marks of time with quiet dignity. In contemplating systemic aging, we see not only the effects of decline but also the continuity of life. The body, though changing, continues to support the experience of being, the capacity to feel, to think, and to connect. The systems may slow, but they persist, a testament to the durability of biology. Aging is thus both a story of loss and a story of survival, a reflection of the body's remarkable ability to endure the passage of time while carrying us through the full arc of life. 13. The aging immune system. Among the many changes that accompany aging, few are as quietly influential as the gradual weakening of the immune system. This system, often described as the body's defense network, protects us from infections, heals wounds, and even patrols for abnormal cells that could turn into cancer. It is a vast and intricate system, woven through the bloodstream, the lymphatic system, and even into the tissues of nearly every organ. For much of life, it operates with remarkable efficiency, detecting and neutralizing threats before they cause serious harm. Yet, as the years pass, its sharpness softens. The decline of the immune system, known as immunosenescence, is one of the defining features of aging, shaping not only our vulnerability to illness, but also the way the body responds to the quiet inflammation that accumulates with time. In youth, the immune system is highly adaptive. It has two major branches: innate immunity, which provides quick, generalized defenses against invaders, and adaptive immunity, which learns from each encounter and provides specific, long-lasting protection. The innate system includes barriers like the skin, chemical defenses in the stomach, and first response cells, such as macrophages and natural killer cells. The adaptive system, on the other hand, relies on specialized cells like T cells and B cells, which remember past encounters and mount stronger defenses with each exposure. Together, these systems form a layered shield that guards the body against the countless microbes and toxins encountered every day. As aging progresses, both innate and adaptive immunity undergo subtle but important shifts. One of the first signs is the gradual decline in the production of new immune cells. In the thymus, an organ where T cells mature, activity decreases sharply after adolescence. By middle age, the thymus has shrunk considerably, and the production of new T cells is limited. This means the body relies more heavily on the pool of T cells it has already produced, many of which have been trained to respond to infections encountered earlier in life. While this provides strong memory against familiar pathogens, it reduces the ability to respond to new threats. This is one reason why older adults are more vulnerable to infections like influenza or pneumonia, and why vaccines may not always provide the same level of protection as they do in younger individuals. The adaptive immune system also shows signs of fatigue in its B cells, the cells that produce antibodies. Over time, B cells produce antibodies with less precision, reducing their effectiveness in neutralizing pathogens. This contributes not only to increased vulnerability to infection, but also to slower recovery when illness does occur. Cuts and wounds may take longer to heal, and infections may linger longer before the immune system can fully clear them. The body that once responded with vigor to every challenge now reacts more cautiously, less able to mount strong defenses. At the same time, the innate immune system becomes less balanced. Some of its cells, such as macrophages, may become sluggish, slower to recognize and respond to invaders. Others may become overactive, releasing inflammatory signals even when no threat is present. This persistent, low-level activation is sometimes called inflammaging. It represents a state where the immune system is constantly simmering, producing small amounts of inflammation that, over time, damage tissues and contribute to chronic disease. Inflammaging is linked to many age-related conditions, including cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, arthritis, and neurodegeneration. It illustrates how the immune system, once a precise and adaptive protector, gradually shifts into a less efficient, more erratic state. The balance between immunity and inflammation is delicate, and aging tips it in subtle but meaningful ways. For example, older adults may have a reduced ability to fight acute infections, yet at the same time, they may suffer more from chronic inflammatory diseases. This paradox reflects the dual nature of the aging immune system, weaker in some areas, overactive in others. The result is a body more vulnerable to both sudden illness and slow, long-term decline. One striking example of immune aging is seen in the response to vaccines. In younger individuals, vaccines stimulate a strong adaptive response, producing memory cells that protect against future infection. In older adults, the response may be weaker, requiring higher doses or repeated boosters to achieve similar protection. This reduced vaccine responsiveness has been a particular challenge in managing illnesses such as influenza and COVID-19 in older populations. It highlights how immunosenescence directly shapes public health, influencing not only individuals but also communities. Cancer risk is also influenced by the aging immune system. In youth, immune surveillance helps detect and destroy cells that begin to divide abnormally. With age, however, this surveillance weakens. Mutated cells are less likely to be recognized and eliminated, increasing the risk of tumors forming and growing. This does not mean that cancer is caused solely by immune decline. Genetics and environmental exposures also play roles, but the fading vigilance of the immune system is a key factor in why cancer becomes more common with age. The decline of immunity is not absolute, however. Older adults often retain significant protection against infections they have previously encountered, and many immune functions continue to serve well into old age. Moreover, lifestyle can influence the pace of immune decline. Regular physical activity, balanced nutrition, sufficient sleep, and reduced stress all support immune resilience. Diets rich in antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals provide the raw materials for immune defense, while exercise promotes circulation and the movement of immune cells throughout the body. These habits cannot stop immunosenescence, but they can soften its impact, preserving vitality and resilience for longer. Scientific research has increasingly focused on understanding and addressing immunosenescence. Some studies explore ways to rejuvenate the thymus or stimulate the production of new T cells. Others investigate drugs or compounds that can reduce chronic inflammation without suppressing necessary immune responses. Still others look at harnessing the microbiome, the community of microbes in the gut, to support immune health. These avenues reflect the recognition that the immune system is not only central to fighting infection, but also to the overall process of aging itself. By preserving its balance, scientists hope to extend health span, the years of life lived in good health. There is a symbolic depth to the story of immune aging as well. The immune system is our lifelong companion, quietly protecting us from dangers we rarely notice. In childhood, it is like a vigilant guardian, quick to learn, quick to defend. In adulthood, it is steady and experienced, relying on memory to keep threats at bay. In later years, it grows weary, slower to adapt, yet still persistent in its work. It may falter, but it does not abandon us. Even in decline, it continues to serve, reflecting the resilience that defines life itself. To contemplate the aging immune system is to see aging not just as the soft fading of strength, but as the shifting of balance within the body's deepest defenses. It reminds us that decline is not sudden but gradual, unfolding in the rhythms of cells and signals, in the quiet inflammation that smolders within tissues, and in the slower responses to new challenges. It is part of the larger story of aging, where resilience meets fragility, and where the body continues to endure even as its defenses grow more modest. In the end, the aging of the immune system illustrates the essence of aging itself, a gradual rebalancing of vitality, a softening of sharp edges, a quiet persistence in the face of time. It shows us that even as the body becomes more vulnerable, it continues to strive, to adapt, and to survive. And in that striving, there is a kind of quiet dignity, a reminder that aging, though marked by decline, is also marked by endurance, the resilience of life written in every cell, carried forward until the final breath. 14. The brain and aging. Among the many systems that change with age, none carries as much mystery and fascination as the brain. This organ, soft in texture yet immeasurable in complexity, is the seat of memory, thought, and personality. It is the conductor of the body's orchestra, sending signals through countless nerves to coordinate movement, sensation, and emotion. To explore the aging brain is to explore not only biology but also identity, for within its delicate folds lies the essence of who we are. With the passing of time, the brain undergoes changes, some subtle, others profound, that shape the experience of aging at the deepest level of consciousness. The structure of the brain does not remain unchanged across the years. From youth to maturity, the brain is dynamic, forming new connections, strengthening pathways through learning, and pruning away unused circuits to make itself more efficient. In later life, however, a gentle reversal occurs. The overall volume of the brain begins to decline, particularly in regions such as the hippocampus, which is vital for memory, and the prefrontal cortex, which governs decision-making, attention, and executive function. This loss of volume is not abrupt but gradual, a steady shrinking that reflects the loss of neurons and the thinning of the connections between them. Though the brain remains active and capable, the pathways it relies upon become less dense, and the precision of its signals softens with time. One of the most noticeable effects of these changes is in memory. Many older adults experience difficulty recalling names, misplaced objects, or details of recent conversations. This does not mean that memory vanishes, but rather that the ability to retrieve certain pieces of information becomes slower. Long-term memory, especially for events and skills learned long ago, often remains strong. A person may remember childhood scenes with clarity, even as they struggle to recall the contents of yesterday's meal. This shift reflects the different ways in which memory is stored and retrieved, with recent memories more vulnerable to the effects of aging. Cognition, too, undergoes a gentle slowing. Tasks that require quick processing or juggling multiple pieces of information may become more challenging. Reaction times lengthen, and the ability to focus on several things at once diminishes. Yet while speed may decline, depth often increases. Older adults frequently excel at drawing connections, recognizing patterns, and applying wisdom from past experiences. The brain may no longer race through information as it once did, but it develops a richness of perspective that comes from decades of lived experience. On a microscopic level, neurons themselves bear the marks of aging. These specialized cells, which transmit signals through electrical and chemical means, gradually accumulate damage. Their energy-producing mitochondria falter, their membranes stiffen, and their ability to release and absorb neurotransmitters weakens. The result is less efficient communication across synapses, the tiny gaps between neurons where signals are passed. Neurotransmitters such as dopamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine decline in abundance, affecting mood, memory, and movement. These changes contribute to the slower thinking, increased forgetfulness, and sometimes shifting emotions of older age. Despite this decline, the brain retains a remarkable capacity for adaptation, known as neuroplasticity. Even in later years, it can form new connections, reorganize pathways, and learn new skills. Older adults who engage in mentally stimulating activities, reading, problem solving, learning new languages, or playing music often preserve cognitive function more effectively. This adaptability demonstrates that the aging brain is not a static organ doomed to decline, but a living, changing structure capable of renewal. The plasticity may not be as rapid as in youth, but it is still present, offering hope that mental vitality can be sustained well into later life. The senses provide another window into brain aging. Vision and hearing changes are not only matters of the eyes and ears, but also of the brain's ability to process sensory input. With age, the visual cortex may become less adept at interpreting detail, and the auditory pathways may struggle to filter background noise. This contributes to the difficulty older adults sometimes face in noisy environments, where hearing words becomes challenging even with good ear health. These changes are not simply failures of the senses, but reflect the brain's slower processing of complex stimuli. Emotions, too, shift with brain aging. Interestingly, research suggests that older adults often experience greater emotional regulation, responding with more calmness to stressful situations. The amygdala, the brain's center for emotional response, becomes less reactive with age, while the connections between emotional and cognitive regions become stronger. This may explain why many people report increased contentment, acceptance, and resilience as they grow older, even as physical strength declines. The aging brain, while slower in some ways, may develop new balances that foster a gentler outlook on life. Of course, not all changes are benign. For some, aging brings neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, conditions marked by more severe loss of neurons and accumulation of harmful proteins. These diseases highlight the vulnerability of the brain and the importance of maintaining its health. While not every older adult will experience such conditions, their prevalence increases with age, reflecting the delicate balance between resilience and fragility within the nervous system. Lifestyle plays a profound role in the health of the aging brain. Physical activity supports blood flow and oxygen delivery, nourishing brain cells and encouraging the release of growth factors that foster new connections. Nutrition provides the building blocks for neurotransmitters and antioxidants to combat oxidative stress. Sleep, often overlooked, allows the brain to clear away waste products and consolidate memories. Social interaction, too, engages cognitive and emotional circuits, keeping the brain active and connected. These influences do not eliminate aging, but can shape how it is experienced, preserving function and slowing decline. Philosophically, the aging brain invites reflection on the nature of identity. If the brain is the seat of memory and thought, then what does it mean when those capacities shift with time? Are we the same person when memory softens, when recall falters, when names escape us? Many would say yes, for the essence of identity is not held in a single memory or a quick thought, but in the continuity of self, the story carried across decades. The aging brain may slow, but it continues to hold the narrative of a life layered with experience, wisdom, and meaning. There is also a quiet beauty in the way the brain adapts to age. It does not resist time entirely, but works with it, trading speed for depth, trading novelty for stability, trading sharpness for perspective. In doing so, it reflects the larger story of aging itself, where physical decline is balanced by the growth of insight and understanding. The brain, like the body, does not escape the passage of years, but in its endurance, it demonstrates the resilience of life. To contemplate the aging brain is to contemplate the heart of aging itself. It is to see how time shapes not only the body but the very way we think, feel, and remember. It is to recognize that while some functions decline, others endure, and still others grow stronger. The aging brain is not a broken organ but a changing one, adapting to the rhythms of life, carrying us forward with dignity, even as it carries the marks of time. And in its quiet persistence, it reveals one of the most profound truths of existence, that aging is not the end of vitality, but the transformation of it. Decline and wisdom, loss and endurance. 15. Hormones and the passage of time. Among the many forces that shape the aging process, hormones hold a particularly important role. These chemical messengers flow through the bloodstream, carrying signals that influence growth, energy, reproduction, mood, and countless other functions. They are the body's communication system, ensuring that distant organs work in harmony and that cells respond appropriately to changing needs. From childhood through adulthood, hormones guide the great transitions of life, the surge of growth in adolescence, the stability of maturity, and the gentle decline of later years. As we age, the balance of these hormones shifts, and with it, the rhythm of the body itself. To explore hormones is to explore the invisible current that helps set the pace of time within us. In youth, hormones are abundant and powerful. Growth hormone surges during childhood and adolescence, stimulating the lengthening of bones, the growth of muscles, and the development of organs. Sex hormones such as estrogen and testosterone rise, driving the changes of puberty and preparing the body for reproduction. Thyroid hormones regulate metabolism, providing energy and ensuring that growth is coordinated with nutritional resources. In these years, hormones create a sense of vitality and resilience, their messages sharp and their effects far-reaching. The body responds quickly, healing wounds rapidly, building strength with ease, and adapting swiftly to challenges. But hormones are not constant. They follow cycles and rhythms, influenced by time of day, seasons of the year, and stages of life. As the body passes from youth into middle age, some hormones begin to decline. Growth hormone production slows, reducing the stimulus for muscle and bone maintenance. This contributes to the gradual thinning of bones and the shrinking of muscle mass that marks the later decades of life. Thyroid function may also shift, leading to subtle changes in metabolism. Energy levels, once seemingly limitless, may begin to soften, reflecting the quieter hormonal background. One of the most significant hormonal transitions in human life occurs with the reproductive system. In women, estrogen and progesterone levels decline sharply during menopause, bringing the end of fertility and the cessation of menstrual cycles. This change, often occurring in the late 40s or 50s, is accompanied by a range of physical effects: hot flashes, changes in sleep patterns, shifts in mood, and alterations in bone density. The decline in estrogen also influences cardiovascular health, as this hormone once provided protective effects for the heart and blood vessels. While menopause is often seen as a moment of loss, it is also a natural turning point, marking the body's shift into a new phase of life. In men, testosterone levels decrease more gradually, often referred to as andropause. This decline may contribute to reduced muscle strength, lowered energy, changes in mood, and shifts in libido. Unlike menopause, andropause does not occur abruptly, but unfolds across decades, a slow fading of hormonal signals. The decline of testosterone also influences bone density and fat distribution, subtly reshaping the body with time. Though less dramatic than the changes experienced by women, it represents another way in which hormones set the rhythm of aging. Other hormonal systems also show signs of aging. The adrenal glands, which produce cortisol, shift in their output over time. Cortisol, often called the stress hormone, plays a role in regulating metabolism, immune response, and energy. In later life, the regulation of cortisol may become less precise, contributing to changes in sleep, mood, and resilience against stress. The pancreas, too, undergoes subtle shifts, with insulin signaling becoming less effective. This reduced sensitivity to insulin contributes to the higher risk of type 2 diabetes in older adults. Another example of how hormonal changes shape health. These hormonal shifts are not only biological but experiential. They influence how we feel and how we perceive the passage of time. The surges of adolescence bring intensity and transformation, while the declines of later years bring steadiness, sometimes accompanied by fatigue or calmness. Hormones help create the texture of life stages, the rhythms of youth, maturity, and age. They remind us that aging is not only about visible signs, but about the unseen currents that flow within us, shaping every thought, every movement, every emotion. The decline of hormones also highlights the interplay between reproduction and aging. From an evolutionary perspective, the body invests heavily in maintaining vitality during the years of fertility. Once reproduction is no longer possible, the selective pressure to maintain high levels of hormones diminishes. This evolutionary logic echoes the disposable soma theory, which suggests that the body prioritizes reproduction over long-term maintenance. Hormonal decline, then, can be seen not as a flaw but as a natural reflection of life's priorities, written into the biology of survival and continuation. Yet hormones are not only about decline. Even as some fade, others continue to provide stability and support. The body adjusts, finding new balances as it moves into later life. Emotional regulation, for instance, often improves, perhaps reflecting not only experience, but also shifts in the neurochemical environment. Many older adults report greater contentment, less reactivity, and a deeper sense of peace. Hormonal changes may contribute to this transformation, softening the sharp edges of stress and amplifying calmness. Aging, in this sense, is not simply loss but change, a rebalancing of inner chemistry that alters how life is experienced. Modern science has explored ways to intervene in these hormonal changes, from hormone replacement therapy to targeted treatments for metabolism and bone health. These interventions can ease symptoms and slow certain aspects of decline, but they also carry risks, such as increased likelihood of cancer or cardiovascular complications. The challenge lies in finding balance, supporting the body without disrupting its natural rhythms. Research continues to explore whether gentle modulation of hormones might extend health span, but the answers remain complex and nuanced. Philosophically, hormones remind us of the interconnectedness of body and mind. These chemical signals, invisible to the eye, shape not only physical health but mood, motivation, and even perception. They remind us that aging is not simply the stiffening of joints or the graying of hair, but also the softening of emotional responses, the shifting of energy, the quieting of once surging drives. Hormones reveal aging as both a physical and emotional journey, a transformation of the inner world as much as the outer form. To contemplate the role of hormones in aging is to see life as a series of gentle waves. Each stage has its own current, its own balance of signals that shape the body and the self. The waves of youth surge with intensity. Those of maturity bring stability, and those of age carry calmness and reflection. Hormones do not vanish entirely. They simply change their rhythm, guiding us through the stages of existence. In their rise and fall, we find the story of life itself, written not in years but in the subtle messages carried in the bloodstream. In the end, the aging of the hormonal system is another reminder that time moves not only on the surface but deep within. The passage of time is written in chemical whispers, in the quiet decline of signals that once shouted in youth. And yet, even in their softness, these whispers guide us, carrying us gently into the later chapters of life. Aging, through the lens of hormones, is not abrupt or harsh, but a gradual shifting of currents, a gentle turning of the tide that reflects the natural rhythm of existence. 16. Lifestyle and the pace of aging. Though aging is a universal truth written into the biology of every living being, the way it unfolds can differ remarkably from one person to another. Some individuals remain vigorous and resilient into their later years, while others encounter frailty and decline much earlier. While genetics set the framework, lifestyle plays a profound role in shaping the pace of aging. The daily choices we make, how we move, how we eat, how we rest, and how we manage stress, leave deep marks on our cells, tissues, and systems. These choices do not alter the inevitability of aging, but they can influence its trajectory, either softening its impact or hastening its progression. Among the most influential factors is physical activity. Movement is one of the most fundamental aspects of human life, and its absence or presence profoundly shapes the aging process. Muscles, bones, and joints are all maintained by use, growing stronger in response to stress and weakening in its absence. Regular physical activity stimulates the production of new mitochondria, enhances blood flow, and maintains muscle mass, counteracting sarcopenia and osteoporosis. It also supports cardiovascular health by keeping blood vessels flexible and improving circulation. Even gentle activity, such as walking, stretching, or gardening, preserves balance and coordination, reducing the risk of falls in later life. The body responds to movement at any age, showing that the rhythm of activity is one of the most powerful influences on vitality. Nutrition is equally central. The foods we consume provide not only energy but the building blocks of cells, hormones, and proteins. Diets rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats supply antioxidants that combat oxidative stress, protecting cells from free radical damage. Adequate protein supports the maintenance of muscle and bone, while vitamins and minerals sustain immune function and repair processes. Conversely, diets heavy in processed foods, sugars, and unhealthy fats accelerate inflammation, promote insulin resistance, and hasten decline. Research has also shown that caloric balance plays a role. Moderate restriction without malnutrition can extend lifespan in some animals, possibly by enhancing cellular repair processes and stimulating autophagy. While the exact application to humans is still under study, the evidence suggests that balanced, nourishing diets support longer and healthier lives. Sleep, though often overlooked, is another pillar of healthy aging. During sleep, the body carries out vital processes of repair and restoration. The brain consolidates memories, clears metabolic waste, and resets its circuitry for the coming day. Hormones that regulate growth, stress, and appetite follow rhythms tied to sleep, making rest a key factor in maintaining balance. Inadequate sleep accelerates many aspects of aging, from impaired cognition to weakened immunity. Over time, chronic sleep deprivation increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and neurodegeneration. In contrast, consistent, restful sleep supports resilience, sharpening the mind and strengthening the body's ability to adapt to stress. In the quiet hours of the night, the body renews itself, showing that rest is as vital as activity in shaping the course of life. Stress, too, leaves its imprint on the pace of aging. The body's stress response is designed for survival, releasing hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to prepare for challenges. While useful in the short term, chronic stress becomes harmful, keeping the body in a constant state of alertness. Elevated cortisol levels weaken the immune system, disrupt sleep, impair memory, and promote inflammation. Over years, this contributes to cardiovascular strain, metabolic imbalance, and cognitive decline. The effects of stress can even reach down to the level of chromosomes, accelerating the shortening of telomeres. Managing stress through practices such as meditation, mindfulness, time in nature, or supportive relationships can help counter these effects, reminding us that emotional balance is as important as physical health in aging well. Social connection is another dimension, often underestimated in its power. Human beings are deeply social creatures, and the presence or absence of supportive relationships profoundly influences well-being. Loneliness and social isolation have been linked to increased risk of cognitive decline, depression. In contrast, strong social ties foster resilience, reduce stress, and encourage healthy behaviors. The simple acts of conversation, companionship, and shared experience nourish the mind and the body, sustaining vitality in ways that biology alone cannot explain. As people age, maintaining bonds with family, friends, and community provides not only emotional support but also a protective influence against decline. The environment in which we live also plays a role in aging. Exposure to pollutants, toxins, and ultraviolet radiation accelerates cellular damage, while access to clean air, safe water, and nourishing food promotes health. Sunlight, in moderation, supports vitamin D synthesis and bone health, yet excessive exposure leads to skin aging and increased cancer risk. The balance of environmental exposures shapes how gracefully the body weathers the years. In many ways, aging is not only a biological journey, but also an environmental one, deeply influenced by the conditions of the world around us. Cognitive engagement, much like physical activity, sustains the vitality of the brain. Learning new skills, reading, solving puzzles, or even engaging in meaningful conversations keeps neural pathways active and flexible. The brain responds to challenge by strengthening connections, a process known as neuroplasticity. In older adults, continued cognitive engagement is associated with lower risk of dementia and greater preservation of memory. Just as muscles grow stronger with use, the brain remains more resilient when exercised, showing that mental activity is a vital companion to physical activity in the pursuit of healthy aging. Taken together, these lifestyle factors illustrate that aging is not solely determined by genetic programming or molecular damage. The way we live exerts a profound influence on how these underlying processes unfold. Choices made daily accumulate, just as molecular damage accumulates, shaping the course of health across years. This does not mean aging can be avoided, but it does mean its impact can be softened, its onset delayed, and its quality improved. The path of aging is not fixed. It bends in response to movement, nourishment, rest, stress, connection, and environment. Philosophically, the influence of lifestyle on aging speaks to the balance between fate and freedom. The body carries within it genetic instructions and biological limits, yet within those limits lies room for choice. How we treat the body, how we nourish and care for it, shapes the way it carries us through the years. This balance suggests that while we cannot stop time, we can influence how we travel through it, whether lightly or heavily, whether with resilience or fragility. There is also a quiet dignity in this understanding. To live well is not to deny aging, but to embrace habits that support life as fully as possible. It is to see exercise not as a demand but as a gift, to see food not only as sustenance but as medicine, to see sleep not as lost time but as renewal. It is to recognize that relationships and mental engagement are not luxuries but essentials, threads that weave resilience into the fabric of life. In these choices, aging becomes not merely decline but transformation, shaped by the ways we honor the body and mind. In the end, lifestyle reminds us that aging is both universal and personal. We all grow older, but how we experience that journey depends greatly on how we live. The pace of aging is not fully in our control, but it is not fully outside it either. Each choice, however small, adds to the rhythm of time within us, and in that rhythm, we find the possibility of grace, the possibility of moving through the years with vitality, balance, and a sense of peace in the quiet unfolding of life. 17. Medical advances and interventions. For much of human history, aging was accepted as an unavoidable descent, an inscrutable process beyond the reach of medicine. Physicians could treat illnesses, mend wounds, and ease suffering, but the steady march of time seemed untouchable. In recent decades, however, advances in science and medicine have begun to illuminate aging in new ways. No longer seen solely as a mysterious inevitability, aging is now understood as a biological process, with pathways that might be studied, influenced, and perhaps even slowed. This recognition has opened a new frontier, where researchers and physicians explore interventions that aim not only to treat the diseases of aging, but also to address aging itself. One of the most promising areas of research focuses on the hallmarks of aging cellular processes such as telomere shortening, mitochondrial decline, protein misfolding, and chronic inflammation. By identifying these fundamental mechanisms, scientists hope to design therapies that target the root causes of aging rather than merely its symptoms. For instance, drugs that influence mitochondrial function are being explored with the goal of restoring energy production and reducing oxidative stress. Compounds that enhance autophagy, the process by which cells clean themselves of damaged components, are another area of focus, aiming to rejuvenate cells by improving their housekeeping. These approaches represent a shift from reactive medicine, which treats problems after they appear, to proactive interventions that support resilience before decline sets in. Senolytic therapies are one example of this new direction. As cells age, some enter a state known as senescence, where they stop dividing but continue to release inflammatory signals. Over time, these senescent cells accumulate, contributing to tissue damage and dysfunction. Senolytic drugs are designed to selectively eliminate these aged cells, reducing their harmful influence. Early studies in animals have shown that clearing senescent cells can improve physical function, delay disease, and even extend lifespan. Though research in humans is still in its early stages, the concept highlights the possibility of directly addressing one of the core processes of aging. Another area of exploration is the role of telomeres, the protective caps at the ends of chromosomes. As cells divide, telomeres shorten, eventually leading to senescence. The enzyme telomerase can rebuild telomeres, but in most human cells, its activity is limited. Research has investigated ways to activate telomerase safely, in hopes of extending cellular lifespan. While the risk of promoting cancer growth is a concern, controlled modulation of telomere biology could one day become part of anti-aging medicine. The idea of extending the clock written into our chromosomes remains both tantalizing and controversial, a reminder of the delicate balance between renewal and control. Stem cell research also offers possibilities. Stem cells are the body's reservoir of renewal, capable of generating new cells to replace those that are lost or damaged. With age, stem cell reserves diminish, and their ability to regenerate tissues weakens. By replenishing or rejuvenating stem cells, it may be possible to restore the body's capacity for repair. Experimental therapies already explore the use of stem cells to treat conditions such as heart disease, neurodegeneration, and arthritis. While many challenges remain, the concept of harnessing the body's own regenerative potential lies at the heart of medical advances in aging. Beyond cellular interventions, medicine also seeks to address systemic changes. For example, chronic low-level inflammation, or inflammaging, is increasingly recognized as a central driver of age-related disease. Drugs that modulate the immune system, reducing harmful inflammation without suppressing protective defenses, may help preserve tissue function and prevent decline. Similarly, interventions that support metabolic balance, such as drugs targeting insulin sensitivity, aim to reduce the risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disease, while also influencing pathways tied to longevity. In addition to pharmaceuticals, there is growing interest in compounds known as geroprotectors, substances thought to protect against multiple aspects of aging. One such compound is rapamycin, a drug originally used to prevent organ transplant rejection. Rapamycin influences a cellular pathway called mTOR, which regulates growth, metabolism, and stress responses. In laboratory animals, rapamycin has been shown to extend lifespan and improve health span. Researchers are cautiously investigating its potential in humans, exploring whether adjusting this pathway could slow the pace of aging. Other compounds, such as metformin, a common diabetes medication, are also under study for their possible anti-aging effects. These efforts highlight a shift toward repurposing existing drugs, looking at them not only for their intended purposes but for their broader influence on longevity. Advances in genetics and biotechnology are also transforming the landscape of aging research. Gene editing tools like CRISPR allow scientists to alter specific sequences of DNA, potentially correcting mutations or adjusting pathways that influence aging. While still in its infancy, this technology offers the possibility of precise interventions at the genetic level. Similarly, personalized medicine, which tailors treatment based on an individual's genetic and biological profile, could one day provide customized strategies to support healthy aging. By understanding the unique interplay of genes, environment, and lifestyle, medicine may move closer to individualized longevity care. These scientific pursuits, though promising, are tempered by caution. The complexity of aging means that interventions rarely produce simple outcomes. Extending lifespan without extending health span would only increase years of frailty. Moreover, interfering with fundamental processes carries risks, as seen in the balance between telomere extension and cancer risk, or between immune suppression and infection. The goal, then, is not merely to live longer, but to live better, to extend the period of vitality rather than the period of decline. In parallel with medical advances, preventative care remains central. Vaccination programs, early detection of disease, management of chronic conditions, and promotion of healthy behaviors continue to extend both lifespan and quality of life. While cutting-edge therapies capture attention, the fundamentals of medical care, nourishment, movement, rest, and social support remain powerful tools in shaping the course of aging. Advances in medicine build upon these foundations, offering new possibilities while affirming the importance of holistic care. The pursuit of medical interventions in aging also raises profound questions. If science succeeds in slowing or even partially reversing aspects of aging, how will society adapt? What will it mean to live decades longer? And how will resources, relationships, and perspectives shift? These questions remind us that medicine does not exist in isolation, but is entwined with culture, philosophy, and ethics. The quest to alter aging is not only a scientific challenge but also a reflection of humanity's desire to transcend limits while grappling with the meaning of those limits. There is something deeply human in this endeavor. From the earliest healers who sought remedies for frailty To today's scientists mapping the genome and testing geroprotectors, the impulse is the same: to ease suffering, to extend vitality, and to push back against the erosion of time. Medical advances do not eliminate aging, but they reveal it more clearly, showing us the levers that shape it and the possibilities for gentle intervention. In this pursuit, we see both the power of science and the humility it demands, for the body is intricate and time is patient. To reflect on medical advances in aging is to see the merging of hope and caution. It is to recognize that while aging is written into the fabric of life, it is not untouchable. The pathways that guide decline are also pathways that can be studied, influenced, and perhaps softened. Medicine offers no promise of immortality, but it offers the possibility of more years lived in strength, clarity, and presence. In this, it aligns with the deepest goals of humanity, not to escape aging, but to live well within it, to carry vitality as far as possible along the journey of time. 18. The future of anti-aging research. Looking ahead, the future of anti-aging research holds both mystery and promise. What was once confined to myths of elixirs and fountains of youth has, in recent decades, shifted into the domain of laboratories, clinics, and scientific imagination. The pace of discovery is rapid, driven by the tools of modern biology, genetics, and data science, and by a growing desire not only to live longer but to live better. When we imagine the decades to come, we see a landscape where the frontiers of medicine may blur the boundary between youth and age, where aging itself could be approached as a condition to be treated rather than a fate to be endured. One of the most intriguing directions is cellular reprogramming. Researchers have discovered that it is possible to take ordinary adult cells and, by activating specific genes, return them to a more youthful, stem-like state. This process, known as induced pluripotency, has opened new doors in regenerative medicine. Applied carefully, partial reprogramming may one day allow cells to be rejuvenated without erasing their identity, restoring function to aged tissues without the risks of uncontrolled growth. Imagine heart cells regaining their youthful resilience, neurons renewing their ability to communicate, or skin cells replenishing their elasticity. Though this vision remains experimental, it offers a glimpse of a future where aging tissues might be restored at their very core. Another avenue lies in the study of the epigenome, the layer of chemical modifications that sits atop DNA, controlling which genes are active and which are silent. Over time, the epigenome drifts, leading to inappropriate activation or silencing of genes, a phenomenon sometimes called epigenetic drift. This contributes to cellular dysfunction and decline. But unlike DNA itself, the epigenome is flexible, capable of being reset. Researchers are exploring ways to restore youthful epigenetic patterns, essentially rewriting the instructions that guide aging cells. This could one day allow scientists to dial back the biological clock, not only slowing aging but potentially reversing some of its effects. The use of artificial intelligence and big data is also transforming the field. With vast amounts of biological information now available from genetic sequences to protein structures and metabolic profiles, AI can identify patterns invisible to human researchers. It can predict how drugs might interact with aging pathways, uncover new molecular targets, and personalize interventions for individuals based on their unique biology. In this way, the future of anti-aging research is not only about discovering new molecules, but also about harnessing information itself, creating a more precise and individualized science of longevity. The microbiome, the vast community of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that live in and on our bodies, is another frontier. These microbes play critical roles in digestion, immunity, and even mood regulation. With age, the composition of the microbiome shifts, often in ways that contribute to inflammation and disease. Restoring or maintaining a youthful microbiome through diet, probiotics, or more advanced microbial therapies could become a strategy for extending health span. Already, researchers are beginning to explore fecal microbiota transplantation and engineered probiotics as tools to rejuvenate the microbiome and, by extension, the host. The realm of nanotechnology also holds promise. Tiny particles, engineered at the scale of molecules, could one day deliver drugs directly to aging cells, repair damaged DNA, or clear away harmful protein aggregates. Nanodevices might circulate in the bloodstream, monitoring the body's internal environment and releasing therapeutic agents precisely where needed. Though still largely theoretical, such technology reflects the increasing convergence of biology and engineering, pointing toward futures where aging could be managed with tools once thought the stuff of science fiction. Cryopreservation and organ regeneration also occupy the horizon of anti-aging science. Advances in bioprinting and tissue engineering suggest the possibility of replacing worn or failing organs with lab-grown counterparts. Stem cells, scaffolds, and growth factors are already being used to grow tissues such as skin, cartilage, and blood vessels. Extending this to complex organs like kidneys, hearts, or even parts of the brain would be a profound leap, allowing damaged systems to be renewed rather than merely supported. Alongside this, cryopreservation, the ability to preserve tissues or even whole bodies at very low temperatures, remains a speculative but active area of research, holding out the possibility of pausing biological time itself. The future of anti-aging research is not only about biology but also about philosophy and ethics. If science succeeds in extending lifespan by decades or more, how will humanity adapt? What will it mean for societies when individuals live not 80 or 90 years, but 120 or beyond? How will relationships, families, and communities change? How will resources be distributed in a world where lifespans stretch longer? These questions remind us that the science of aging is deeply intertwined with the human story, carrying implications that reach far beyond the laboratory. Yet even as the science grows more ambitious, the goals remain grounded. Most researchers emphasize health span, the period of life spent in good health over mere lifespan. Extending years without vitality would only increase suffering, while extending vitality brings joy, purpose, and resilience. The focus, then, is not to chase immortality, but to ensure that the years we do live are as full and vibrant as possible. The dream is not endless life, but meaningful life, lived with strength and clarity until the final chapters. There is a quiet poetry in imagining the future of anti-aging research. It is a story of humanity's desire to understand and shape the forces of time, to move gently against its current without denying its flow. We will not conquer aging completely, for it is bound into the fabric of life, but we may learn to soften its edges, to carry vitality further, to walk longer in the light before entering the dusk. Just as medicine once transformed childbirth, infection, and injury, so too may it transform the experience of aging, not by halting it, but by reshaping its arc. To reflect on the future is to see both hope and humility. The tools of science grow ever more powerful, yet the mystery of life remains vast. Aging may be influenced, perhaps delayed, but it will remain part of existence. The value of research lies not in erasing age, but in honoring life, preserving its strength, its clarity, and its dignity for as long as possible. And so the journey continues, one of discovery, of care, and of wonder, as humanity seeks not the fountain of youth, but the gentle extension of vitality, the graceful widening of life's horizon. 19. Ethics and society in an age of longevity. As the science of aging advances, it opens not only biological pathways, but also profound questions for humanity. If it becomes possible to slow, halt, or even reverse some aspects of aging, what will this mean for society? Extending life is not merely a matter of medicine, it is a matter of culture, ethics, and philosophy. The desire to live longer is as old as civilization, yet the tools we are developing now could transform that ancient dream into reality. This possibility brings with it opportunities and challenges, inspiring both hope and unease. To contemplate the ethics of longevity is to look beyond the body to the fabric of society, and to ask how lengthening life might reshape what it means to be human. The first question is fairness. If anti-aging therapies are developed, who will have access to them? Historically, new medical advances from antibiotics to organ transplants have often been available first to the wealthy or privileged. If longevity treatments follow the same pattern, they could deepen existing inequalities, creating a divide between those who can afford extended vitality and those who cannot. This raises ethical concerns about justice. Should the gift of more time be reserved for a few, or should it be shared broadly across humanity? The question of distribution becomes as important as the science itself. For a world where longevity is unevenly distributed could magnify social tensions and inequities. Another question lies in population and resources. If people live significantly longer, societies will face new pressures on food, energy, housing, and the environment. Already, the world struggles with sustainability and balance. Extending lifespans could mean larger populations competing for limited resources, unless balanced by changes in reproduction, consumption, and technology. Some argue that longer lives might allow humans more time to solve these problems, bringing wisdom and stability. Others fear that the pressures of extended lifespans could strain the planet further. The ethics of longevity cannot be separated from the ethics of sustainability, for living longer must also mean living responsibly within the boundaries of the earth. The meaning of work and retirement would also shift. In today's world, careers often span 4 or 5 decades, followed by retirement in later life. But if people live to 120 or beyond in good health, how would societies structure work? Would individuals hold multiple careers across a century? Would retirement be delayed, reshaped, or reimagined entirely? Longer lifespans might provide more time for learning, creativity, and reinvention. But they might also extend the burdens of labor, unless systems adapt. Ethical questions arise about how to balance productivity with rest, and how to ensure that extended life does not become extended toil. The question of generational balance is equally important. Human society is built upon the passing of knowledge, resources, and opportunities from one generation to the next. If lifespans extend dramatically, how will this flow be affected? Will older generations hold on to positions of power and influence for longer, delaying opportunities for younger ones? Or will extended lifespans foster greater mentoring and intergenerational cooperation, as older adults contribute wisdom and experience? These questions touch upon the very structure of human culture, raising the possibility that the rhythm of generational renewal might be softened, stretched into new patterns. On a more personal level, extended lifespans provoke reflection on the meaning of life itself. Knowing that time is limited compels individuals to make choices, to pursue goals, and to cherish relationships. If that time horizon were dramatically extended, would life feel richer or emptier? Would urgency diminish? Or would new forms of purpose arise? Some fear that vastly longer lives could lead to boredom or stagnation, a sense of endless repetition. Others believe that extended time would open vast new horizons for learning, exploration, and self-discovery. The ethical question here is not only about how long we live, but how we fill the time we are given. There are also cultural and spiritual perspectives to consider. Many traditions see aging and death as natural parts of life's cycle, essential to its meaning. To interfere with this cycle raises questions about harmony with nature, about whether extending life is an expression of wisdom or hubris. Some see longevity research as an extension of humanity's age-old struggle to heal and to preserve life. entirely consistent with medicine's mission. Others worry that in pushing too far, humanity risks unbalancing the natural rhythm of existence. These perspectives remind us that aging is not merely a biological process, but also a philosophical and spiritual one, woven into how we understand our place in the universe. At the same time, longer lives could deepen the richness of human relationships. Grandparents might live long enough to see great-great-grandchildren grow to adulthood. Families could span more generations at once, creating broader webs of connection. Friendships might last not decades, but centuries, weathering the full arc of time. Education could be lifelong in a new sense, with individuals returning to study, explore, and reinvent themselves repeatedly. The ethical challenge would be to ensure that these opportunities are not only available but meaningful, that life extension brings not only years but depth of experience. Governments and institutions would also face challenges in adapting to longevity. Health systems, pensions, and social structures are designed around current life expectancies. Extending life would require new models of care, finance, and community. Ethical debates would arise about how to support long lives without neglecting equity or sustainability. Policies would need to balance individual freedom with collective responsibility, ensuring that the gift of time does not come at the cost of justice or harmony. The ethics of longevity also touch upon the question of choice. If interventions exist, should individuals be free to decide how long they wish to live, or will social pressures push people toward extended lifespans? Some may embrace longevity enthusiastically, while others may feel that a natural span is enough. Respecting diverse choices becomes essential in a world where life extension is possible but not universally desired. Freedom and dignity must remain at the center of the conversation. Philosophically, the ethics of anti-aging research remind us of the delicate balance between human aspiration and human humility. To seek longer life is natural, reflecting the deep will to endure and to love. Yet to live wisely requires remembering that life's meaning is not measured only in length, but in quality, connection, and purpose. Extended lifespans must be paired with extended compassion, extended justice, and extended stewardship of the world. Without these, longevity could become a burden rather than a gift. In the end, the ethics of aging are not separate from the science but woven into it. Every advance carries implications not only for biology but for how we live together as communities, as families, as humanity. The science may one day allow us to soften time's touch, but the meaning of that choice will depend on how we shape it ethically and socially. Aging, whether short or long, is a shared experience, and its future must be guided not only by discovery but by wisdom. 20. Reflections on aging and the human journey. As we arrive at the final stage of this exploration of aging, it is natural to pause and reflect on what it all means. We have traced the journey from the smallest units of life, where telomeres shorten and mitochondria falter, to the largest questions of society and ethics, where the future of longevity reshapes how humanity understands itself. Aging, when viewed from every angle, molecular, systemic, personal, and cultural, is revealed not as a single process but as a tapestry, woven from countless threads of biology and experience. It is both science and story, both decline and endurance, both limit and gift. To reflect on aging is to reflect on life itself, for aging is nothing more and nothing less than the passage of time through living beings. At the cellular level, aging is precise and measurable. We can see it in the shortening of telomeres, the decline of mitochondrial energy, the accumulation of misfolded proteins, and the quiet smolder of inflammation. Each of these processes tells us that time leaves its mark even at the smallest scales. And yet, within these same cells, we also see resilience. Repair systems strive to mend damage, chaperones fold proteins again and again, and autophagy clears away debris. Even in the face of decline, The body does not simply give way. It resists. It adapts. It persists. The science of aging, therefore, is not only a study of loss, but also a study of endurance, of the body's ceaseless effort to sustain life against the quiet pull of entropy. At the level of the whole body, aging reveals itself in the systems we rely upon every day. The skin softens, the hair grays, the muscles weaken, the bones thin, the senses dim, the heart beats less efficiently, the lungs breathe with less elasticity, the brain slows in its recall, the immune system falters in its vigilance, and yet, these same systems continue to carry us, often for many decades, adapting in quiet ways. The heart remodels to keep blood flowing, the brain rewires to preserve memory, the immune system learns to cope even as it declines. The aging body is not a failing machine, but a living system that bends, adjusts, and finds balance as it walks steadily forward. On the personal level, aging is the texture of lived experience. It is the soft ache of joints in the morning, the laugh lines that deepen with every year of joy, the wisdom that comes from lessons learned across decades. It is the way memory shifts, the way priorities change, the way perspective broadens. Aging is not only physical decline, but also emotional transformation. Many people report greater contentment, resilience, and clarity in later life, a gentler outlook born not despite age, but because of it. While youth is often marked by speed, novelty, and urgency, age brings depth, steadiness, and reflection. Each stage has its gifts, and the journey through them is what shapes the story of a life. On the societal level, aging challenges us to rethink structures of care, community, and meaning. Longer lives bring opportunities for intergenerational connection, for passing wisdom across broader spans of time. They also bring challenges of healthcare, resources, and equity. The science of aging pushes us to consider not only what is possible, but what is right, how to distribute the gifts of longevity fairly, how to balance personal freedom with collective responsibility, how to ensure that more years do not simply mean more frailty, but more vitality. These questions remind us that aging is never only about individuals, but about humanity as a whole. Looking forward, the future of aging research glimmers with possibility. Stem cells, senolytics, epigenetic reprogramming, and geroprotectors all hint at futures where aging might be softened, its edges blunted, its course slowed. Artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and microbiome science add new tools to the quest. Yet for all this promise, there remains humility. Aging is deeply embedded in the biology of life, and any attempt to alter it must navigate complexity and risk. The goal is not immortality, but dignity, the extension of health span rather than mere lifespan, the preservation of vitality rather than the endless stretching of years. The future of aging is not to escape it, but to live it more fully, with more strength and clarity. At the deepest level, aging also raises philosophical questions. What does it mean to live a finite life? How does the awareness of death shape the way we love, create, and strive? If life were endless, would it lose some of its urgency, its poignancy, its beauty? Perhaps aging, though difficult, gives life its shape, its narrative arc, beginnings and endings, growth and decline, youth and age. These contrasts are what give meaning to existence. To age is to move through this arc, to embody the passage of time, to carry within oneself the story of life unfolding. There is also a profound beauty in the universality of aging. Every living being shares in it. The tree that grows tall, its branches heavy with age, the bird whose feathers fade with time, the mountains that erode slowly under wind and rain all participate in the rhythm of change. To age is to belong to the world, to be part of the same cycle that shapes rivers, seasons, and stars. In this sense, aging connects us not only to other people but to the larger cosmos. It is not merely a personal journey, but a universal one. And so, as we close this reflection, we return to the heart of the matter. Aging is not a failure to be fixed, nor an enemy to be conquered, but a natural part of the story of life. It is at once limitation and opportunity, loss and wisdom, fragility and endurance. Science will continue to illuminate its pathways. Medicine will continue to soften its impact, and philosophy will continue to seek its meaning. But in the end, aging will remain what it has always been, the gentle unfolding of time within us, the quiet rhythm that carries us from birth to death, from beginning to end. To live is to age, and to age is to live. The lines on the face, the slowing of steps, the shifting of perspective, these are not only signs of decline, but also marks of continuity, evidence that life has been lived, that time has been carried, and that existence has been experienced in full. Aging is not only the end of youth, but the fullness of life, the gathering of decades into a whole. In its inevitability lies its meaning, a reminder to cherish the present, to honor the past, and to embrace the future with gratitude and wonder. Thus, the story of aging is the story of humanity itself, finite yet profound, fragile yet resilient, fleeting yet filled with meaning. And in that story, there is beauty, for it teaches us that while time may move steadily forward, life within it can be rich, deep, and endlessly precious.